Trials and Temptations. Chapter 21, Overcoming the Trials. Adrian and Serena stepped out of the final chamber, the weight of their triumph settling over them like a comforting embrace. The long journey through the temple had been grueling, testing them at every turn. From navigating treacherous waters and solving intricate puzzles to confronting illusions and taming chaotic forces, each trial had pushed them to their limits. But through it all, they had relied on each other, adapting to challenges, leveraging their individual strengths, and growing stronger together. The sense of accomplishment they felt was not just from completing the trials, but from proving their worthiness to the ancient forces that guarded the temple's secrets. As they made their way toward the temple's exit, the echo of their victories resonated in their minds. The trials had tested their physical agility, their ability to communicate and work as a team, their perception in the face of illusions, and their inner strength when confronted with their deepest fears. The temple had not only been a test of skill but also of character, a measure of whether they were truly worthy of the knowledge and power hidden within. Each challenge had been designed to push them to confront their limitations, and they had emerged victorious, their bonds strengthened and their confidence renewed. With the trials behind them, they stood at the threshold of a new chapter in their journey. The path forward was clearer now, shaped by the wisdom and artifacts they had gained within the temple. But even as they celebrated their success, they knew that the true test was yet to come. The ancient knowledge they had uncovered would be crucial in their mission to break the curse that had haunted Serena for so long, and the challenges ahead would require everything they had learned. Their spirits were lifted by their victory, but their resolve remained unshaken. They were ready for whatever came next. As Adrian and Serena swam back into the central chamber, a strange but unmistakable sensation washed over them. The relic they had discovered earlier now seemed to shimmer with a renewed energy, as though it was reacting to their presence. Its once muted glow now pulsed with vibrant light, casting soft ripples across the chamber. The air around them hummed with an almost tangible magic, a quiet but powerful force that seemed to acknowledge their success in overcoming the temple's trials. It was as if the relic, much like them, had been waiting for this moment, and now, its purpose was becoming clearer. Spread out before them were the ancient artifacts and scrolls they had discovered in the final chest, their surfaces worn with the passage of time but still carrying an undeniable weight. The artifacts were adorned with intricate symbols that matched the markings they had encountered throughout their journey, hinting at a connection between them and the heart of the reef. The scrolls, tightly rolled and bound with worn leather, were filled with detailed inscriptions and diagrams. The delicate parchment seemed to hum with a history long forgotten, as if the very essence of the reef's ancient magic had been sealed within them, waiting to be unlocked by the worthy. Serena moved closer to the scrolls, her fingers brushing against the surface with reverence. As she unrolled one of them, the delicate symbols began to align in her mind, their meaning starting to form like a forgotten language resurfacing from the depths. She could feel the weight of the knowledge contained within these scrolls, a deep understanding of the curse and its origins beginning to take shape. The inscriptions spoke of a powerful force that had been intertwined with the reef for millennia, and the artifacts they had found were part of a larger mechanism designed to either break the curse or bind it forever. Adrian, meanwhile, was drawn to the relic at the center of the chamber. Its glow seemed to intensify as he approached, and he could feel a faint warmth emanating from it. He studied the symbols engraved on its surface, realizing that they were connected to the very prophecies Serena had been unraveling. The relic was not just an artifact. It was a key, a crucial piece that could unlock the hidden truths about the curse and the heart of the reef. The more he examined it, the more he understood that their journey was far from over. This relic, like the scrolls, held a power that could either help them break the curse or reinforce its grip on the reef. Together, Adrian and Serena began to piece together the puzzle, using the scrolls, the relic, and their own experiences to uncover the deeper layers of the prophecy. The symbols on the artifacts, the mechanisms they had activated within the temple, and the relic's renewed energy all pointed to one truth. The heart of the reef was more than just a source of power. It was a living, breathing force, capable of immense creation or destruction. The curse that had bound Serena was but a fraction of its potential, and breaking it would require them to understand the delicate balance between magic, sacrifice, and destiny. They knew the path ahead would not be easy, but now, with the relic and the artifacts in their possession, they were closer than ever to unlocking the truth. Adrian carefully unrolled one of the scrolls, the delicate parchment crackling softly under his touch, its edges curling slightly as he unwrapped it in the dim, flickering light of the chamber. The soft, glowing illumination from the relic bathed the scroll in an ethereal glow, revealing intricate diagrams and a series of elegant yet cryptic symbols. The symbols seemed to pulse with an ancient magic, their meaning eluding him at first, but slowly beginning to unfold as he studied the text. The script was a blend of arcane symbols and an ancient language, hinting at the nature of the curse that had bound the reef and those within it. The diagrams depicted scenes of powerful energy flows and magical bindings, hinting at a deeper, interconnected system that held the reef and its curse together. Serena, drawn to the scroll, leaned over Adrian's shoulder, her fingers gently tracing the intricate symbols and annotations etched along its length. As she touched the ancient text, she could feel a faint hum beneath her fingertips, the magic embedded in the script resonating with her. Her sharp mind began to piece together the symbols' meanings, recognizing familiar patterns from their previous encounters with the curse. These markings, she realized, weren't just a map or a set of instructions. They were warnings and guides, each symbol tied to a specific aspect of the curse's power and the steps needed to break it. She paused at one of the diagrams, where a series of interconnected lines formed a shape she recognized from their earlier encounters, the heart of the reef. As she continued to trace the scroll's contents, Serena's understanding deepened. The scrolls held more than just knowledge of the curse. They contained insights into the very structure of the reef's magic and the steps needed to restore balance. The path to breaking the curse wasn't straightforward. It required precise actions, understanding the deep connections between the reef's magic, the heart, and the relic they had found. With each line and symbol she deciphered, Serena could feel the weight of their task settling upon her. The curse that had plagued the reef for so long was complex, and the path to breaking it would require not only strength and resolve but also a deep understanding of the very forces that had created it. Serena's fingers paused as she carefully examined the scroll, her brow furrowing as she deciphered the ancient text. "This scroll describes the origins of the curse," she said, her voice filled with a mix of awe and reverence. "It's far older than I had imagined." The words on the scroll painted a picture of a time long before the reef had become a place of myth and mystery. The heart of the reef, once a central source of life and magic, had been a powerful force of creation, breathing life into the very waters that surrounded them. But as the heart's power grew, so too did its destructive potential. The scroll revealed that the heart was not just a wellspring of life, but a volatile force, capable of unimaginable destruction when its balance was disturbed. The curse, Serena continued, her voice steady but tinged with the gravity of the revelation, was cast to contain the heart's destructive capabilities. It was meant to restore balance, to prevent the heart from consuming the reef and everything within it. The more Serena read, the clearer it became that the curse was a delicate and dangerous solution, one that bound the heart's power, but at a great cost. The reef had been trapped in an endless cycle of magical restraint, with its full potential suppressed, leaving it unable to thrive in its natural state. The curse had sealed away the destructive aspects of the heart, but in doing so, it also imprisoned its creativity and life-giving force. The reef, once teeming with vibrant life and endless possibility, had been reduced to a shell of its former self. Serena's eyes widened as she read further, discovering the true extent of the imbalance that had been created. "The curse didn't just bind the heart," she said softly, her voice almost a whisper. "It also fractured the very fabric of the reef's magic. The source of creation and destruction, once intertwined, had been separated. The curse severed that connection, leaving the heart in a dormant, unstable state. If we're to break the curse and restore balance, we need to understand how to reunite these forces." The weight of their task settled heavily on Serena's shoulders, but there was also a spark of hope. The knowledge contained in the scroll offered them a glimpse of a way forward, a path to healing the heart and unlocking the true power of the reef. Adrian nodded thoughtfully, his gaze fixed on the scrolls as the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. The depth of the curse's origins and the magnitude of their task became clearer with every word Serena read aloud. The trials we faced, Adrian murmured, were meant to test our understanding of this balance. He paused, reflecting on the intense challenges they had endured, each one designed not only to test their physical abilities but also to challenge their minds and spirits. By proving our worthiness, he continued, his voice steady, we've shown that we're ready to confront the curse and restore harmony. He glanced over at Serena, his eyes filled with determination. Everything we've been through has led us to this moment. We can't turn back now. Serena's focus shifted from the scrolls to Adrian as she absorbed his words. His insight had a certain clarity, one that tied together everything they had encountered. The trials had tested them in many ways, forcing them to face their fears, rely on each other's strengths, and unlock the knowledge hidden within the temple's ancient walls. Each trial had been a step toward understanding the true nature of the curse, and now, with the scrolls in hand and the heart's magic laid bare before them, they had a clearer sense of their purpose. You're right, she said, her voice filled with resolve. We've passed the tests, and now we must use everything we've learned to undo the damage caused by the curse. The heart's balance must be restored. Adrian took a deep breath, his gaze sweeping over the artifacts they had uncovered. The knowledge within the scrolls was invaluable, but it was only a fraction of the puzzle they still had to solve. We've come this far, Adrian said, a quiet fire building in his voice. But the real challenge begins now. The curse was cast for a reason, and its power still holds sway over the reef. We need to find a way to reunite the forces of creation and destruction. Only then can we restore harmony. He turned to Serena, his eyes filled with an unwavering determination. Together, we can finish what was started long ago and free the heart of the reef from its chains. Serena gently unrolled another scroll, her eyes tracing the faded script with careful attention. As she read, a deep sense of awe washed over her. This scroll contains details about the prophecy, she said softly, her voice filled with reverence. It speaks of a chosen pair who will unite the elements of the heart and restore its balance. Her fingers lingered on the delicate parchment, as though absorbing the weight of the words. It seems that the prophecy was not just about finding the keys, she continued, her gaze meeting Adrian's, but also about the synergy between those who seek to break the curse. The realization settled heavily in the air between them, its implications profound. They were not merely individuals chasing a shared goal. They were destined to work together, bound by fate, to restore what had been broken. Adrian leaned closer, studying the scroll alongside Serena. His brow furrowed as he absorbed the meaning behind the prophecy. A chosen pair, he murmured, his voice low. It makes sense, though. We've always known that the power to break the curse wasn't something that could be done alone. He glanced up, his expression intense. The heart is not just an object or a force, it's a living, breathing entity, and it needs more than just a person with strength to control it. It needs unity. He looked back at the scroll, his thoughts racing. The keys, the trials, everything we've done so far, it was all to bring us here, to this moment where we're meant to work together, to complete the balance. Serena nodded, her mind racing as she connected the dots between the prophecy, the trials, and their journey. The synergy between us, between the elements we represent, is the key to breaking the curse. It's not just about brute force or intellect, it's about harmony. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. Everything we've done, every challenge we've faced, has been preparing us for this final task. It's not about defeating the curse. It's about restoring the balance, uniting the forces that were once torn apart. Serena's gaze met Adrian's, her heart swelling with a sense of purpose. We were chosen, not by chance, but because we are the ones who can bring the heart back into equilibrium. Adrian's gaze shifted as the full weight of their journey settled over him, his expression softening with realization. Our journey, our connection, he murmured, almost to himself. It was all part of this prophecy. The words lingered in the stillness of the chamber, as he processed the deeper meaning behind their trials and the bond they had forged along the way. Each challenge, each decision, had been more than just a step toward finding the keys. It had been a step toward understanding that their shared strength was the missing piece needed to restore balance. The realization spread through him like a current of energy, connecting everything they had faced to this moment. He turned to Serena, his eyes intense with a newfound understanding. "We were meant to face these trials together," he continued, his voice steady with conviction. "Every step we've taken, every struggle we've endured, has led us to this point. It wasn't just about surviving the tests, it was about how we complemented each other, how we brought out the best in each other. That's what the prophecy was really saying. Our bond, our connection is the key." The words rang true in his heart, a powerful affirmation of what they had unknowingly been preparing for all along. They had been shaped by their experiences, their trials, and by each other, all to fulfill a destiny that neither had anticipated but now could see so clearly. Serena met Adrian's gaze, her heart echoing the truth in his words. "Our bond is a crucial element in breaking the curse," she said quietly, her voice filled with certainty. She had felt it, the way their actions had always been intertwined, their strengths amplifying one another. From the very beginning, they had been two halves of something larger, something meant to restore harmony. Now, standing on the precipice of their final challenge, she understood that they were not just partners in this quest. They were the heart of the solution. "Together we'll restore the balance," she added, her voice steady with the weight of their shared purpose. Their journey had led them here, and now, they would fulfill the prophecy. The room felt charged with a quiet sense of accomplishment, a palpable energy that hummed in the air around them. Every artifact and scroll laid out before them seemed to resonate with significance, offering crucial insights that illuminated the path ahead. The ancient symbols and texts were no longer just mysterious clues. They were pieces of a puzzle that had come together, forming a clearer picture of their quest. The trials they had faced, each one testing a different aspect of their strength and unity, had not only proven their worthiness but had also granted them the knowledge they needed to continue their journey with newfound purpose. It was as though the very walls of the temple had acknowledged their efforts, rewarding them with the clarity they had long sought. As they stood amidst the relics, the weight of their experiences began to settle in, and with it, an overwhelming sense of understanding. The challenges of the temple had been far more than mere obstacles. They had been a rite of passage, a necessary part of their journey. The ancient forces that had created the trials had shaped them in ways they couldn't have fully understood before. Now, they saw the trials as a way of preparing them for what lay ahead, forging them into the people they needed to be to face the curse and fulfill the prophecy. Each trial had contributed something essential to their growth, whether it was physical agility, mental clarity, or the strength of their bond. The room, with its soft, ethereal light and the artifacts that now held the answers they sought, felt like a place of transition. They had crossed a threshold, not just in their quest, but in their understanding of the larger forces at play. They were no longer just two individuals with a shared goal. They were a unified force, ready to confront the curse with the knowledge and strength they had gained. The temple had revealed its secrets, and with that revelation came the clear sense that they were on the right path. The challenges they had faced had been necessary, and now, with this deeper understanding, they were prepared to face whatever came next. Serena's fingers gently traced the surface of the final artifact, her gaze fixed on the intricate symbols etched into the amulet. The craftsmanship was exquisite, the metal glowing faintly with an otherworldly energy that seemed to pulse in time with her heartbeat. She recognized the symbols immediately. They were the same ones that had appeared on the relic they had discovered earlier in their journey. The connection was unmistakable. The amulet, like the relic, was a piece of the puzzle that would help them unlock the secrets of the heart of the reef. Its power, she sensed, was not just symbolic but deeply rooted in the ancient magic that had once governed the balance of the sea. "This amulet must be one of the 4 keys," Serena said, her voice a mixture of awe and certainty. She held the amulet up to the light, the symbols reflecting a soft glow that seemed to grow stronger as she spoke. The magic embedded within it was undeniable. This was no ordinary artifact. It was a crucial element in their quest to break the curse. The amulet's power was tied to the heart of the reef, and with it, they would be able to unlock the next phase of their journey. Serena felt a surge of both excitement and responsibility. This was the key they had been seeking, and now that they had it in their possession, they could continue forward with a renewed sense of purpose. The realization that they had found one of the 4 keys was both a triumph and a reminder of the challenges still ahead. The amulet, imbued with ancient magic, would aid them in ways they could not yet fully comprehend. Serena could sense its potential to unlock hidden doors, whether literal or metaphorical, and to guide them in their quest to restore balance to the heart of the reef. But they knew that they couldn't rely solely on the amulet's power. They would need to continue their journey with the same determination and unity that had brought them this far. With the key in hand, they were closer than ever to unraveling the mystery of the curse and fulfilling their role in the prophecy. Adrian's eyes gleamed with resolve as he looked at Serena, the weight of their journey settling into his chest. The trials they had endured had not only tested their physical endurance, but also their trust in each other and the strength of their bond. They had faced each challenge head-on, overcoming obstacles that seemed insurmountable, and now, with the knowledge they had gained, the path ahead was clearer. The amulet they had discovered, along with the other artifacts and scrolls, had unveiled the depths of the curse and the true nature of the heart of the reef. It was a force of creation and destruction, and only by uniting the remaining keys could they hope to restore its balance. "We've proven ourselves worthy," Adrian continued, his voice steady and confident. "The trials were more than just tests. They were steps toward understanding the heart's true power. We've learned about the prophecy, the curse, and how our connection plays a crucial role in restoring what's been broken. But our work is far from over." He glanced down at the amulet, feeling its weight in his hand. It was a tangible reminder of the responsibility they now carried. Their journey had led them to this moment, but the remaining keys were still out there, hidden and protected, waiting to be found. With each key they collected, they would come closer to unlocking the heart's potential and breaking the curse that had plagued the reef for centuries. Serena nodded, a shared determination igniting between them. They had come so far, and though the road ahead was fraught with unknowns, they now understood the importance of what they were doing. Their purpose was clearer than ever. They needed to find the remaining keys, one by one, and unite them to unlock the heart's true power. Only then could they restore the balance that had been disrupted so long ago. The knowledge they had gained in the temple had provided them with the map to navigate the challenges still to come. Together they would press on, facing whatever trials lay ahead, and fulfilling their destiny to restore harmony to the heart of the reef. The weight of the prophecy settled over Adrian and Serena like a heavy but undeniable truth. They had known that their journey was important, that their quest to break the curse and restore balance was a matter of life and death for the reef. But this new revelation added a deeper layer of meaning. The trials had not only been physical tests, but had been designed to confirm their place in an ancient narrative that had shaped the course of history. The realization that they were part of something so grand and far-reaching stirred a sense of awe and responsibility in both of them. It was no longer just about them. Their actions would affect the very fabric of the heart of the reef and all that it protected. As they reflected on the journey thus far, Serena couldn't help but think of the many moments when their connection had seemed to transcend mere partnership. The trials had revealed not just their individual strengths but the strength of their bond. Together, they had overcome seemingly impossible obstacles, relying on each other in ways that had made them stronger than they had ever been alone. This bond, forged in the fires of adversity, was now an essential element of their mission. The prophecy had foretold the union of two individuals whose combined strength would be the key to restoring balance. And now, more than ever, they understood that their relationship was not just a personal connection, but a vital part of the forces at play in the heart's restoration. Adrian's thoughts mirrored Serena's, but with a growing clarity that the trials had not just confirmed their worth, they had cemented their destiny. The trials had revealed that they were more than just adventurers or allies. They were the chosen pair in the prophecy, the ones who would reunite the elements of the heart and break the curse that had plagued the reef. Their bond had been tested, and they had passed each challenge with unwavering resolve. Now, as they prepared to continue their journey, they understood the gravity of their mission. The prophecy had set their path, and it was up to them to fulfill it, with every trial they faced bringing them closer to unlocking the power of the heart and restoring harmony to the world. As Adrian and Serena gathered their belongings, preparing to leave the temple, a sense of quiet reflection settled between them. They had come a long way since the beginning of their journey, and the weight of everything they had endured was finally sinking in. The trials had been grueling, pushing them to their limits in ways they had never imagined. Yet, despite the challenges, they had persevered, drawing strength from each other and from the knowledge that they were meant for something greater. Now, standing at the threshold of the temple, they felt the magnitude of their accomplishment. They had not only survived but had emerged stronger, more resolute, and with a clearer sense of purpose. The lessons they had learned in the temple were etched into their minds like permanent imprints. Each trial had tested them in different ways, forcing them to rely on their wits, their abilities, and the deep bond they shared. The first trial had honed their teamwork, the second their perception, and the third their physical endurance and perseverance. And the final trial had proven their inner strength and commitment to their cause. The knowledge gained from the ancient scrolls and artifacts had deepened their understanding of the curse and the prophecy, offering them the tools they needed to continue their mission. It was a pivotal moment in their quest, one that would guide their every decision from here on out. With the temple behind them, Adrian and Serena felt the weight of their responsibility, but it was no longer a burden. The clarity they had gained from the trials had given them the confidence to face what lay ahead. They knew the remaining keys had to be found, and the balance of the heart had to be restored, but they were no longer uncertain of how to proceed. Their bond, forged through the fire of the temple's challenges, was now their greatest strength. Together, they had faced the worst the temple could throw at them and had come out victorious. With unwavering determination, they set their sights on the next step of their journey, ready to confront whatever trials awaited them. With the amulet now securely in their possession and the weight of the prophecy fresh in their minds, Adrian and Serena stood at the threshold of the temple, ready to face whatever came next. The knowledge they had gained from the ancient scrolls and the trials had unlocked a new understanding of their mission. The prophecy, with its clear vision of two individuals uniting the elements of the heart to restore balance, had become their guiding star. The relics, symbols, and clues they had uncovered were not just pieces of a puzzle. They were the keys to breaking the curse that had long plagued the reef. Their journey had shifted from a mere quest to a mission with a purpose far greater than they had initially realized. As they prepared to leave the temple, the bond between them felt stronger than ever. The trials had tested their resolve in ways they never thought possible, but each challenge had only reinforced their connection and their shared commitment to the cause. The trials had shown them the depths of their own strengths, as well as their dependence on each other. Serena's calm wisdom and Adrian's quick thinking had been the perfect complement to one another throughout their journey, and now, with the amulet in hand, they knew that their unity was their greatest asset. The heart of the reef, with all its power and danger, was no longer an insurmountable force. It was something they were prepared to confront, side by side. With renewed determination, they set their sights on the path ahead. The amulet was a powerful symbol, but it was also a tangible reminder of the work still to be done. They knew that finding the remaining keys would not be easy, and the trials they had faced so far were only a fraction of the challenges still in store. Yet, as they swam into the depths of the ocean, their hearts were filled with a fierce resolve. The knowledge of the prophecy and their unbreakable bond had prepared them for whatever lay ahead. The curse that had held the heart in its grip for so long would be broken, and balance would be restored. Together, they would see it through, no matter the obstacles. As Adrian and Serena swam through the magical reef, the shimmering water surrounding them seemed to hum with the same energy that pulsed within their hearts. Their connection, both to each other and to the mission they had taken on, had deepened with each trial they had faced. The hardships they endured in the ancient temple, the tests of mind, body, and spirit, had transformed them. The bond they shared had become an unspoken understanding, a partnership forged in the heat of adversity. Each challenge had not only strengthened their resolve but had also revealed the true depth of their commitment to the prophecy and to breaking the curse that had haunted the reef for so long. The trials had been a turning point in their journey, marking the moment when they fully grasped the significance of their role in the prophecy. What had once been an abstract task, a quest to find the keys, had now crystallized into a clear and unwavering mission. The elements of the heart and the curse that bound it were no longer mysteries they needed to solve. Instead, they had become a responsibility that they could no longer ignore. With the knowledge of the ancient temple and the amulet in hand, they now knew exactly what was at stake: the balance of the reef, and the fate of the magical world they had come to care for. As they ventured deeper into the reef, their purpose had never been clearer. The unity between them, their shared resolve, was more than just a bond of friendship. It was a force that would carry them through whatever lay ahead. They were no longer just two individuals on a quest. They were the chosen pair from the prophecy, and their combined strength was the key to restoring balance to the heart of the reef. With each stroke, they moved closer to the next phase of their journey, their hearts brimming with both the weight of their mission and the fire of determination. Whatever challenges awaited them, they knew they would face them together, with purpose, unity, and the knowledge they had gained from the trials. Chapter 22: A Betrayal Uncovered. In the days following their success in the temple, Adrian and Serena felt a surge of determination that propelled them forward with a sense of renewed urgency. The trials had not only tested their strength and resolve but had also confirmed their place in the ancient prophecy. Now, with the amulet in their possession, they were more focused than ever on their mission: to find the remaining keys and break the curse that had long plagued the magical reef. Every stroke they made through the shimmering waters felt like a step closer to their ultimate goal, the weight of their responsibility mingling with the excitement of their progress. The reef, once a vast and mysterious expanse, now seemed to pulse with a quiet energy, as though it too recognized the importance of their journey. Adrian's eyes constantly scanned their surroundings, while Serena kept a steady hand on the amulet, sensing the subtle currents of magic that seemed to respond to its presence. The ancient artifact had already proven to be more than just a relic. It was a beacon, its power guiding them along the right path. The magic within it resonated with the energy of the reef, offering them clues and nudges as they navigated its labyrinthine depths. Each new day brought them closer to the location of the next key, though the journey was far from straightforward. The challenges they had faced in the temple had prepared them for what lay ahead, but the reef's mysteries were ever-changing. The waters shifted unpredictably, and the currents seemed to lead them in different directions, as if testing their resolve. Yet, with the amulet as their guide and their bond stronger than ever, they felt increasingly confident. They understood now that their success depended not just on solving ancient riddles but on their ability to work together, to trust in each other, and in the magic that connected them to the reef itself. As they ventured deeper into the reef's heart, the urgency of their mission grew. Each new clue they uncovered, each discovery they made, pointed them toward the final pieces of the puzzle. But there was no time to waste. The curse that bound the heart of the reef still held sway, and the clock was ticking. Yet, despite the looming pressure, Adrian and Serena were no longer daunted. Their journey had transformed them, and with the amulet in hand and their resolve solidified, they were ready for whatever challenges the reef might throw their way. Together, they would find the remaining keys and restore the balance of the heart. As they swam deeper into the reef, their focus unwavering, a sudden shift in the currents alerted them to an unexpected disturbance. The water around them grew colder, and the once peaceful rhythms of the reef became erratic. Adrian frowned, sensing a disturbance not just in the environment, but in the very fabric of the magic that had guided them thus far. Serena, too, felt the change, her grip tightening around the amulet as if it were trying to warn them. They exchanged uneasy glances, their intuition telling them that something far more dangerous than they had anticipated was unfolding. It was then that a figure emerged from the shadows of the coral formations, a mysterious being that seemed to materialize from the very depths of the reef. Clad in flowing dark robes, the figure's presence radiated a menacing energy that set the water around them vibrating. The being's eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and its voice, when it spoke, was a low, unsettling echo that reverberated through the chamber. "You are not the first to seek the keys," the figure intoned, its words sending a chill down their spines. "And you will not be the last. But you will fail, just as those before you did." Adrian's heart sank, a sense of dread creeping over him as he realized that the figure was no mere illusion. It was a manifestation of the reef's darker magic. The revelation hit him like a wave. Their journey was not just about finding the keys and breaking the curse. They were being watched, and their every move had been anticipated. This being, perhaps a guardian of the reef's darker secrets, seemed to know far more about their quest than they had hoped. With every passing moment, their path forward seemed more perilous, and the stakes higher than they had ever imagined. Serena clenched her fists, her resolve hardening in the face of the threat. "We won't let you stop us," she said, her voice steady despite the rising fear. The figure's laughter echoed around them, dark and hollow. "We shall see," it murmured before disappearing into the swirling waters, leaving behind a lingering sense of foreboding. As the figure vanished, so did the sudden chill, but its warning lingered in the air. Adrian and Serena were now fully aware that their quest was not just about unlocking ancient secrets. It was a battle against something far more ancient and malevolent than they had ever anticipated. Their progress had been interrupted, and now, the true nature of the forces they were up against was becoming all too clear. The musty air of the library hung thick with the scent of old paper and salt, and the faint creak of wooden shelves echoed as Serena wandered between the aisles of maritime tomes. Her mind was still reeling from the encounter with the shadowy figure in the reef, but she pushed the unease aside, focusing on their next task. As Adrian scoured the library's far corner for any maps or documents that might give them more clues about the remaining keys, Serena's gaze landed on a narrow shelf tucked in the back, half hidden beneath a stack of leather journals. It was a set of documents, bound in a faded, leather cover that seemed to shimmer with an unusual energy, as though it had been untouched by time. Curiosity piqued, Serena carefully pulled the documents from the shelf, brushing off the dust that had settled over the years. The moment her fingers touched the worn cover, a pulse of energy surged through her, a faint echo of magic that seemed familiar yet foreign. She exchanged a quick glance with Adrian, who had now approached her side, his interest piqued by the way the documents seemed to hum with an almost sentient presence. As Serena opened the first page, the dense script revealed an intricate network of symbols and maps, many of which matched the markings they had encountered on their journey so far. It was as if this collection of papers held the final pieces to the puzzle they had been trying to solve, revealing not just the locations of the remaining keys, but also an ancient history that tied their quest to the very heart of the reef. The more Serena read, the more the documents seemed to hint at something much deeper than they had initially realized. The symbols depicted ancient rituals, not unlike the trials they had faced in the temple, but with a far darker connotation. The keys, it seemed, were not only meant to restore balance to the heart of the reef, they were also a way to unlock a power that had been dormant for centuries, a power that had the potential to either heal or destroy the entire realm. The last page, however, contained a cryptic warning that sent a chill down Serena's spine. "Beware the final key, for it is the key to both salvation and ruin." Adrian leaned over her shoulder, his brow furrowed as he skimmed through the pages. "This isn't just a map of where the keys are," he said, his voice low with concern. "It's a guide to something much more dangerous, something we may not fully understand yet." Serena nodded, her fingers lingering on the last line. The warning was clear. They weren't just racing against time to find the keys, but against something that could change everything they had come to know about the reef's magic. As they stood there, the weight of their discovery pressed down on them, and for the first time, they understood just how high the stakes truly were. The journey ahead was not just about finding the remaining keys. It was about surviving what would happen when they finally unlocked the heart's true power. Adrian took the book from Serena with a look of concern, his fingers brushing over the cracked leather cover as if it might reveal more than what was on the surface. As he opened the book, the pages crackled with age, but the ink seemed oddly fresh, as if someone had only recently penned these words. His eyes quickly scanned the pages, noting the strange mix of ancient symbols and more contemporary writing. The symbols were unmistakable. Those were the same marks they had encountered in the temple, the ones that had led them to the discovery of the amulet and its connection to the curse. But these texts felt different. They weren't just historical records. They were something more urgent, more dangerous. Serena hovered beside him, her eyes scanning the pages over his shoulder. "These symbols, they're not just part of the reef's ancient magic. They're connected to the prophecy," she said, her voice tight with the weight of the realization. As Adrian continued to flip through the book, they discovered references to the curse, but in a more personal light, suggesting that the curse was not just a random force of nature, it had been intentionally bound, waiting for someone to unlock it. The text described a ritual, a sequence of steps that would release the curse from its ancient chains, but it also hinted at a cost, something they would have to sacrifice in the process. A particular page caught their attention. It detailed the creation of the first key, which had been forged under the guidance of an ancient order known only as the Keepers of the Reef. According to the text, this order had once been tasked with maintaining the balance between the heart of the reef and the world above, ensuring that neither side fell into chaos. But something had gone wrong. The balance had been disturbed, and the keepers had disappeared, leaving behind only fragments of their knowledge. The text seemed to suggest that whoever could unlock the full sequence of the keys would either restore the balance or unleash an uncontrollable force. Serena's heart raced as she realized the enormity of what they were dealing with. If we follow these steps, we could be playing into the hands of something far more powerful than we realized, she said, her voice shaking slightly. Adrian closed the book slowly, the weight of her words sinking in. They had come so far, but this new revelation added a layer of danger they hadn't anticipated. The ancient symbols in the keys were not just keys to unlocking a treasure, they were keys to something that could reshape the very fabric of the reef and beyond. And now, the real test was whether they were ready to face whatever force they might unleash in the process. Adrian's fingers paused as he scanned the list of names, the ink seemingly dark around one entry, as though it had been written with an urgency not present in the rest of the text. His gaze fixed on the name, his pulse quickening. The name was unmistakable, Serena. It was her name, or at least a name so similar it couldn't be a coincidence. The page described a figure from ancient times, someone who had been pivotal in the history of the reef, and it seemed that their connection to the heart was not as distant as they had once believed. This individual, referred to only as the Chosen, was said to have been a key player in the formation of the curse, and according to the text, had vanished under mysterious circumstances. Serena leaned in closer, her heart racing as she read over Adrian's shoulder. Her hand trembled as she traced the letters of her name, still disbelieving. "This doesn't make sense. How could my name be here?" she murmured, almost as if speaking to herself. The document provided no clear answers, only that the Chosen was said to possess unique abilities tied directly to the heart of the reef. The text suggested that this person could either save the reef from its impending destruction, or be the one to unleash its ruin, depending on the choices they made. Serena's connection to the reef and the curse was growing clearer, and yet more complex than she had ever imagined. Adrian's mind raced as he tried to make sense of the discovery. "This could mean that your connection to the reef isn't just part of the prophecy," he said quietly. "You might have been part of the reef's history all along, or maybe you're even the key to breaking this curse. This Chosen, it could be you." His voice was steady, but the weight of the revelation hung heavily between them. What did this mean for Serena? For their quest? If she truly was the Chosen, it could change everything. They were no longer just seekers of the keys. They were playing a role in something far older and more dangerous than either of them had anticipated. Serena stood in silence for a long moment, the revelation settling in. Her thoughts swirled as she considered the possibilities. She had always felt a strange connection to the reef, but this was something different. This was a connection written into history, into the very fabric of the prophecy. She could feel the weight of the role she might be destined to play, and the uncertainty of what it might mean for her, for Adrian, and for the reef itself. "If this is true," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, "then I don't know if I'm ready for what comes next. But we have no choice. We have to follow the path, no matter where it leads." Adrian nodded, his eyes filled with determination. The pieces were falling into place, but they had yet to understand the full picture. And as the weight of the prophecy grew heavier, so did the stakes of their mission. Adrian's eyes widened as he stared at the name on the page, his voice thick with disbelief. He leaned closer to the book, his finger tracing the letters of the name. "This name, it's someone we know. Someone who's been assisting us all this time." Serena turned to him, her curiosity piqued, but her expression soon shifted to one of concern as realization. The name he had found was Dorian, the same person who had been providing them with information about the reef, the ancient texts, and even guiding them toward the temple where they had faced the trials. Dorian's role in their journey had seemed like that of a helpful ally, but now, seeing his name in the context of the prophecy, everything was suddenly in question. Serena felt a chill run down her spine. Dorian had always been enigmatic, his motives never fully clear, but he had been instrumental in providing them with resources, knowledge, and support. She had trusted him, believing that his actions were driven by the same desire to protect the reef as theirs. But now, seeing his name linked to the ancient texts and prophecy, a sense of unease began to settle over her. Dorian? But why is his name here? What does this mean for us? She couldn't fathom how someone they had relied on could be tied to something so deeply entrenched in the reef's history, and possibly its curse. Adrian's mind raced as he reread the text, searching for more details. The document didn't offer much, only stating that Dorian was connected to the Chosen, and that his role was critical in the outcome of the prophecy. There were vague references to his presence in the history of the reef, suggesting that he was more than just an ally. He might have a deeper, more personal stake in the outcome. Was he truly working with them for the greater good, or was his involvement part of a much larger, more complex plan? Adrian felt a knot tighten in his stomach as he considered the possibility that Dorian's true intentions might be far more complicated than they had ever imagined. Serena exchanged a wary glance with Adrian, her instincts warning her that their journey had just become even more dangerous. They had trusted Dorian, and now his name was entwined in the very prophecy they were working to unravel. What if Dorian had been guiding them all along for his own purposes? What if he had been manipulating them, using their quest to further a hidden agenda? We need to confront him, Serena said firmly, her voice cutting through the tension. We need to find out what he knows, and what his role truly is in all of this. Adrian nodded in agreement, his determination matching hers. They couldn't afford to ignore the possibility that their ally might not be who he appeared to be, and if he was tied to the fate of the reef, then they needed to understand his involvement before it was too late. Adrian's face tightened with a mix of disbelief and confusion as he pointed to the name in the book. It's Dorian, he said, his voice low but steady. The name had been staring back at him, almost as if mocking his trust in the man who had helped them through so many trials. Dorian, the seemingly helpful ally who had offered them guidance and information about the reef, had been a constant presence in their journey. Yet here, in the pages of an ancient text, his name was tied to something far more complicated and potentially dangerous. Adrian could feel a cold weight settling in his chest as the pieces of the puzzle began to shift, threatening to change everything they thought they knew. Serena's gaze darted between Adrian and the book, her mind racing. She had trusted Dorian. After all, he had provided crucial information about the prophecy, the reef's magic, and even led them toward the temple where they'd completed the trials. She couldn't reconcile the kind, knowledgeable figure they had relied on with the possible implications of his name appearing in the scrolls. Are you sure? Serena asked again, her voice tight with concern, as though repeating the question might somehow undo the growing suspicion in her heart. Why would his name be in this? It doesn't make sense. He's been helping us, guiding us. Her words trailed off, her thoughts swirling as she tried to make sense of the betrayal that seemed to be unfolding before her. Adrian's brow furrowed as he flipped through the book again, his fingers tracing the text. The more he read, the more unsettling the connection between Dorian and the prophecy seemed to become. Dorian's name was mentioned alongside the Chosen, those fated to restore balance to the heart of the reef. But it wasn't just his name. There were cryptic references to his role in the reef's history, suggesting that he was more than just an ally or a guide. It's like he's been involved in this prophecy long before we ever met him. Adrian muttered under his breath. But in what way? Is he one of the Chosen, or is he something else entirely? His words hung in the air, laden with the weight of uncertainty and dread. Serena's thoughts swirled as the realization began to sink in. Dorian's connection to the reef and the prophecy was far deeper than they had ever imagined. She had always sensed there was more to him than met the eye. But this new revelation turned everything they had trusted on its head. "If he's been part of this from the beginning," she said, her voice steady despite the storm of thoughts in her mind, "then we can't just let him continue to lead us without knowing where his true loyalties lie." Adrian nodded, his expression hardening with resolve. They had come too far to let their quest be manipulated by someone they thought was an ally. The next step was clear. They needed answers, and they needed to confront Dorian before it was too late. Adrian's eyes scanned the pages again, his disbelief growing with each passing moment. The realization hit him like a cold wave. "It's someone from the town," he repeated, shaking his head slowly. "An ally who has been helping us gather information and supplies." His voice faltered for a moment, as though the weight of the betrayal was sinking in. The name in the document was unmistakable. It was Dorian, a local scholar they had met early on in their quest. He had provided them with crucial information about the reef and its mysteries, guiding them toward the temple and offering advice at key moments. Now, this document suggested something far darker. Dorian wasn't just a helpful figure. He had been tracking their every move, subtly influencing their decisions, and manipulating events to fit a purpose they couldn't yet understand. Serena felt a chill run through her as she processed Adrian's words. She had always sensed that there was something elusive about Dorian, something that didn't fully align with his friendly demeanor. But she had trusted him when they had needed help, when they had needed guidance to navigate the dangers of the reef. "Manipulating events?" she echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. Her mind raced, replaying their encounters with Dorian. He had been there when they uncovered the first clues about the curse, when they had found the hidden temple, and even when they had faced the trials. His assistance had always seemed timely, always precise. But now, she couldn't shake the feeling that everything he had done had been with some greater agenda in mind, one that hadn't included them finding the truth. Adrian clenched his jaw, frustration and anger bubbling to the surface. "The worst part is that we don't know how deep his involvement goes," he said, flipping through the pages with a growing sense of urgency. "Has he been controlling us from the beginning? Was he the one who led us to the trials, knowing that we would succeed just to get us to this point?" His voice was laced with a mixture of betrayal and confusion. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that they had been manipulated by someone they had trusted. Every piece of their journey had been guided, but by whom, and for what purpose? The possibilities felt overwhelming, and Adrian could feel the weight of the decisions they would have to make. Serena exhaled sharply, a mixture of disbelief and resolve settling over her. "We need to confront him," she said, her voice firm now. "We've come this far, and if he's been pulling the strings all along, we can't let him control the outcome of this quest." Her fingers tightened around the edge of the document as she met Adrian's gaze. "We need to find out why he's been following us, what his endgame is, and whether he's working alone, or if there are others involved." Adrian nodded, his expression hardening with resolve. The road ahead had just become far more complicated, but one thing was certain. They couldn't move forward without confronting the truth of Dorian's involvement. Serena's heart sank as the weight of the revelation pressed down on her. She had trusted Dorian, relied on his knowledge and guidance, believing he was an ally in their mission. But now, the unsettling truth hung in the air like a dark cloud. If Dorian had been manipulating them all along, it meant their entire quest had been compromised. Every step they had taken, every decision they had made, could have been part of a larger, unknown scheme. The realization was a bitter pill to swallow, and it left Serena feeling betrayed. Their journey had been difficult enough without the shadow of doubt clouding their every move. Adrian's jaw tightened in response to Serena's words, the gravity of the situation sinking in. He had always trusted Dorian's advice, believing him to be a knowledgeable and well-meaning ally. But now, that trust was shattered. "We can't let this go unanswered," Adrian said, his voice low and resolute. "If he's been using us for his own purposes, then we need to confront him directly. We have to find out what his true intentions are and why he's been manipulating us." His hands clenched into fists, the need for answers burning in his chest. He couldn't allow their quest to be derailed by someone they thought was on their side. This betrayal had to be addressed, no matter the cost. Serena nodded, determination setting into her features. "We can't let him control the outcome of our mission," she said, her voice steady with resolve. "We've come too far to let this deception undo everything we've worked for." The documents they had uncovered provided only a glimpse of the truth, but they needed more. The thought of confronting Dorian was daunting, but Serena knew it was necessary. They couldn't move forward without understanding what he had been orchestrating from the shadows. Whatever his role in their quest, it was time to confront him and bring everything into the open. Together, they knew they couldn't afford to hesitate. The stakes had never been higher, and the urgency of the situation pressed on them with increasing intensity. If Dorian was truly working against them, then their mission to break the curse and restore the heart of the reef was at risk. Serena glanced at Adrian, her gaze unwavering. "We need to find him," she said firmly, the determination in her voice matching his. "And when we do, we'll make sure we get the truth, no matter what it takes." With a sense of urgency weighing heavily on them, Adrian and Serena made their way through the winding streets of the town, their minds racing as they processed the implications of the betrayal they had uncovered. Every step felt like it carried them closer to a confrontation they weren't prepared for, but there was no turning back now. The friendly faces they had encountered throughout their journey now felt like masks hiding unknown motives, and the once comforting surroundings of the town now seemed cold and unfamiliar. They couldn't shake the thought that they had been manipulated, their every move watched and controlled by someone they had trusted. The thought of confronting this person, this ally, sent a chill through Serena's spine, but she knew they had no other choice. As they approached the modest home of Dorian, the man who had been a constant presence in their lives, both Adrian and Serena couldn't help but feel a growing unease. His home, with its simple charm and inviting atmosphere, had always been a place where they felt safe to rest and recover. Now, it seemed like the setting of a trap. Serena's hand instinctively tightened around the amulet they had recovered, her fingers brushing against the cool, ancient surface for reassurance. Adrian walked beside her, his expression grim but determined. His thoughts were a storm of confusion and anger, but he focused on the task at hand. They needed answers, and Dorian was the only one who could provide them. When they reached the door, there was a moment of hesitation, a silent exchange of glances that spoke volumes. Serena took a deep breath, steeling herself for the confrontation that was about to unfold. They had no idea how Dorian would react or what he would say, but they couldn't allow him to continue pulling the strings from the shadows. Adrian knocked sharply on the door, the sound echoing through the quiet street. His pulse quickened as he waited for a response, knowing that the answers they sought could change everything. The air around them felt thick with tension, as if the very town was holding its breath along with them. After a few moments, the door creaked open, revealing Dorian standing on the threshold. His expression shifted from surprise to something unreadable as he saw them standing there, both looking determined and a little wary. For a split second, there was an unsettling silence between them. Dorian's eyes flickered with something that could have been guilt or apprehension, but it quickly masked itself behind a carefully composed smile. "Adrian, Serena," he said with a smooth tone, as if nothing was amiss. "What brings you here?" His calm demeanor only served to fuel the suspicion building in Serena's chest. This was no longer the ally they thought they knew. This was the moment they had been preparing for, and there was no turning back. As Adrian and Serena neared the house, the faint glow of light spilling from the windows caught their attention. The usual calm of the quiet town was pierced by a subtle, unexpected energy. Through the half-drawn curtains, they could see shadows moving within, the faintest hint of activity that suggested someone was inside, likely expecting them, or perhaps not expecting them at all. The hairs on the back of Serena's neck stood on end as the weight of the situation settled in. Their hearts pounded in their chests, knowing that the confrontation they had long avoided was now inevitable. The once familiar house, a place where they had shared meals and exchanged ideas, now felt foreign, as if its walls were concealing truths they weren't ready to face. Adrian stepped forward, raising his hand to knock on the door with a firm, deliberate motion. The sound resonated through the quiet of the night, stark and commanding. A moment moment passed, then another, each second dragging with the tension that clung to them both. When the door finally creaked open, the face that greeted them was not the warm and friendly one they had grown accustomed to. Instead, Dorian stood there, his expression a tight mask of surprise that quickly shifted to apprehension. His eyes darted between them, betraying a flicker of something, perhaps fear or guilt, before he schooled his features into a semblance of composure. "Adrian, Serena," Dorian said, his voice smooth but carrying an edge of uncertainty. "I wasn't expecting you both so soon. Is everything all right?" The words were too carefully chosen, the tone too neutral, and in the pause that followed, the air between them thickened with the weight of unspoken questions. Serena studied him closely, looking for any hint of the man she thought she knew, but his face was a well-guarded fortress. There was no warmth in his eyes, only the coldness of a man caught off guard, but not yet broken. Every moment of their journey together, every scrap of advice he had given them, now seemed tainted by the suspicion that clung to the very air around them. Adrian didn't flinch under Dorian's gaze, but his jaw tightened. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low and controlled, though his mind raced with 1,000 possibilities. "There are things we need to clear up. Things we've learned." His words were simple, yet they held the weight of 100 revelations. Dorian's eyes flickered to Serena, a brief glance that did not escape her notice. The slightest tension tightened his posture, the hint of a man who realized the illusion was over. Serena felt the unease settle deeper in her gut as she exchanged a look with Adrian, silently steeling herself for whatever truths Dorian was about to reveal, or conceal. They were past the point of no return, and whatever secrets he held, they were about to be dragged into the open. Dorian's attempt at casualness fell flat, his voice carrying an edge that didn't match the seemingly innocent words. He leaned against the doorframe, his arms crossed in a way that felt more defensive than relaxed. The flicker of anxiety in his eyes was unmistakable, even though he tried to mask it with a forced smile. Adrian could see right through the act, the tension in Dorian's posture telling a different story than his words. It was clear that something was amiss, and the discomfort in the air grew thicker with every passing second. The cordial facade only deepened the suspicion that had taken root in both Adrian and Serena. Serena stepped forward, her expression steely. "We've learned a few things," she said, her voice measured but firm. "Things that don't add up." She watched Dorian closely as she spoke, noting the way his gaze shifted toward the hallway behind him, as if he were considering retreating, or perhaps searching for an escape. His smile faltered for the briefest moment, but it was enough to reveal the truth. Something was wrong. Serena's heart raced, the urgency in her chest pushing her to dig deeper, to uncover the answers that had eluded them for so long. She had trusted Dorian, but the revelation about his involvement in their journey's darker undertones was impossible to ignore now. Adrian's voice was low and steady, cutting through the silence that had settled between them. "We know about the documents," he said, his words deliberate, each one a weight in the growing tension. "We know you've been keeping track of our progress." He didn't flinch as Dorian's eyes widened, nor did he let the flicker of unease in Dorian's expression go unnoticed. Adrian stood tall, his gaze unyielding, refusing to back down now that the truth had been set in motion. He could feel the pressure building, the moment of reckoning approaching, and he knew that this confrontation was necessary if they were to understand the full scope of Dorian's betrayal. Dorian's expression shifted ever so slightly, from surprise to something harder, more calculating. The smile he had forced onto his face slipped away entirely, replaced by a guarded, almost resigned look. For a long moment, there was no sound, only the tense silence that stretched between them. Dorian looked at Serena, then back at Adrian, his lips pressing into a thin line. "I didn't want it to come to this," he finally said, his voice quieter, laced with regret that felt almost insincere. "But you have to understand I had no choice." His words hung in the air, heavy with the implication of decisions made in the shadows, decisions that were now laid bare. The truth was beginning to surface, and Serena could feel the gravity of the revelation pressing down on all of them. Dorian's eyes flickered nervously, but he quickly regained his composure, though his forced calmness only deepened the suspicion gnawing at Adrian. The weight of Adrian's words hung in the air like a thick fog, and Serena stood close by, her arms crossed in a posture that mirrored Adrian's, steady, resolute, and brimming with quiet intensity. She could feel the tension rising with each passing second, the air thick with unspoken truths. Dorian's usual charm seemed to have evaporated, leaving behind only the cold reality of the situation. He glanced briefly toward the hallway behind him as if considering running, but the look in Adrian's eyes kept him rooted to the spot. "We've seen the evidence," Adrian continued, his voice unwavering. "Documents, maps, names, things that connect you to more than just our mission. It seems you've been watching our every move, guiding us, or controlling us." He stepped forward, narrowing the space between them, his gaze never leaving Dorian's face. Adrian could see the guilt flickering in Dorian's eyes, and though the man tried to maintain his composure, the cracks were becoming impossible to ignore. Every word from Adrian seemed to cut deeper, peeling away the veneer Dorian had so carefully crafted. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was a manipulation on a level they hadn't anticipated. Serena's voice broke through the silence, sharp and full of accusation. "You've been keeping secrets from us, Dorian. We trusted you. You were supposed to be helping us, guiding us through the dangers we face. But now we know you've been pulling the strings from behind the scenes. What else were you hiding?" Her words were a sting, and she could see the way Dorian flinched, the guilt evident in the way his shoulders stiffened. He had miscalculated, thinking they would never uncover the truth. Now that they had, the gravity of his actions was setting in, and Serena wasn't sure if she was angrier at the betrayal or the deception that had clouded everything they had done together. Dorian took a deep breath, his gaze flickering between Adrian and Serena, as though weighing the cost of admitting the truth. Finally, he spoke, his voice tight with a mixture of regret and defiance. "I never meant for it to go this far," he said, the words heavy with something between guilt and justification. "But the truth is, I had my reasons. Things you don't understand. My involvement in this, it wasn't about betraying you. It was about survival, about protecting something much bigger than any of us." He paused, as though considering whether to share the full extent of his actions. The silence stretched out, and Serena could feel the truth just out of reach, waiting for Dorian to finally reveal what had driven him to manipulate them in such a way. Dorian's voice trembled slightly as he took a step back, his eyes darting toward the door behind him, perhaps weighing his options in an attempt to regain control of the situation. The casual facade he had worn so well cracked, leaving the vulnerability beneath exposed. The hesitation in his tone only deepened the suspicion in Serena's mind. She exchanged a quick glance with Adrian, both of them silently agreeing that this was the moment they would get answers, no matter how painful they might be. The revelations they had uncovered were just the beginning, and Dorian's confession, if he were to give it, could change everything. "Explain?" Adrian's voice was low, but there was an edge of impatience in it now. His patience was wearing thin, his anger simmering beneath the surface. "What's left to explain, Dorian? We know you've been tracking us. You've been involved with forces we don't even understand. Your reasons don't matter right now. What does matter is why you let us walk into danger without telling us the truth." Adrian's stance was firm, unyielding. He had given Dorian the benefit of the doubt for too long, trusting him as a friend and ally. But now all of that felt like a distant memory, dismantled by the web of lies that had been spun around them. Serena could feel her pulse quicken as she watched Dorian's body language shift under the pressure. His guilt was palpable, and the fear creeping into his expression made it clear that he hadn't expected this confrontation. "Dorian," she said, her voice measured but intense, "we're not going to let this go. Not without understanding why you've been playing both sides." She moved a step closer, her presence deliberate, as if to underline her point. The air between them was charged with tension, and though part of her wanted answers, part of her also wanted to believe that there was a reason, something they hadn't seen yet, that justified his actions. But as she stood there, every instinct told her that whatever explanation he was about to offer, it would be far more complicated and dangerous than they ever imagined. Dorian let out a long, shaky breath and finally lowered his gaze, unable to meet their eyes. "I didn't want this to happen," he confessed, the words falling from his lips in a rush. "I never meant to hurt you. But I had to protect someone. There are forces at work far beyond the curse, beyond anything you've seen. My involvement in your mission, it wasn't just about helping you. It was about making sure you didn't uncover too much too soon." He paused, his voice catching. "The prophecy, the keys, they're just part of a much larger game. And I've been playing it for far longer than you know. I had no choice but to keep you in the dark." His eyes finally met theirs, filled with the weight of his confession, and it was clear that there was much more at play than either of them had anticipated. Serena's words hung heavy in the air as she took another step closer, her stance unwavering. Every inch of her demeanor radiated determination, the same unyielding resolve she had shown throughout their trials. Her gaze locked onto Dorian's, her eyes narrowed with suspicion and hurt. "Don't think we haven't noticed," she continued, her tone laced with a quiet fury. "The timing of your help, the way you've steered us, it all adds up. You've been watching our every move. But why, Dorian? Why manipulate us if you were really our ally?" Adrian stood slightly behind Serena, his arms crossed and jaw clenched. His expression was a mixture of betrayal and frustration, and his presence was a silent but powerful reinforcement to Serena's words. He had trusted Dorian implicitly, and now that trust had been shattered piece by piece. He wanted to know the truth. He needed to understand what had driven their ally to such drastic actions. "You've been a part of this from the beginning," Adrian added, his voice cutting through the tension. "But we need to know your true intentions. What's your endgame?" The silence that followed felt suffocating, the weight of their unanswered questions pressing down on Dorian like an invisible force. Dorian swallowed hard, clearly struggling to find the right words. His hands fidgeted at his sides, the guilt still evident in his posture. "You have to understand, I never meant for you two to get caught in the middle of this," he said, his voice betraying his growing unease. He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "The prophecy, the curse, the keys, they're part of something much larger, something far more dangerous than you can imagine. I had to make sure that certain events unfolded in a very specific way, and that meant guiding you, steering you in the right direction, but also keeping you away from the truth. If you had discovered too much too soon, it would have jeopardized everything." Serena's brows furrowed as she processed his words, but it only deepened her mistrust. "So what? You've been manipulating us for some greater cause? All this time, you've been playing us like pawns in some game we don't even understand?" Her voice wavered slightly with the weight of her disappointment, but she quickly regained her composure. "What is it you're trying to protect, Dorian? Who are you working for?" The weight of Dorian's admission hung heavily in the air, and Serena's heart clenched with a mix of disbelief and frustration. The ally who had once been a friend, a trusted source of information and support, was now revealed to be an instrument of something far darker. Dorian's shoulders slumped, his eyes avoiding theirs as he spoke, the guilt in his posture evident. "I never wanted to betray you," he continued, his voice quieter now, almost pleading. "But I didn't have a choice. This figure, they're far more powerful than anything we've encountered, and their influence extends much further than I ever could have imagined." His words lingered, heavy with the unspoken truth of his involvement in something much larger and more dangerous than he had anticipated. Adrian's expression darkened as he processed the weight of the revelation. "So you've been spying on us, using us to achieve someone else's agenda?" His voice was filled with sharp anger, but there was a hint of hurt beneath it. "We trusted you, Dorian. We fought alongside you, shared our most vulnerable moments, and you were just playing a part in someone else's scheme?" His fist clenched at his sides, and for a moment, it felt like the ground beneath them had shifted, as if the very foundation of their journey had been cracked. His eyes bore into Dorian's, a silent demand for more answers. Dorian seemed to shrink under the weight of their accusations, his voice faltering as he struggled to explain. I wasn't lying to you, not in the way you think. I believed I was helping you, guiding you toward the right path. But the truth is, there are forces beyond what we can control, and they knew the prophecy would unfold this way. They knew what was going to happen, and they needed to make sure things didn't go off course. He took a breath, his gaze flickering nervously. The curse, the keys, they're not just about breaking some ancient spell. There's a greater purpose, one that I didn't fully understand until it was too late. Serena's mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of the truth that Dorian had revealed. What greater purpose? She asked, her voice steady but sharp. What's at stake here, Dorian? What is this figure trying to achieve? Her eyes locked onto his, demanding the answers that had eluded them for so long. You've been keeping us in the dark, and now you expect us to trust you again? She didn't want to, not after everything, but the weight of the situation, of everything they had fought for, was too much to ignore. The path forward was murky, but she needed the whole truth if they were to have any hope of completing their mission. Adrian's voice trembled with barely contained fury. His hands clenched into fists at his sides as the weight of Dorian's betrayal settled over him. Why didn't you tell us? He demanded, stepping closer, his gaze sharp and unyielding. His normally calm demeanor had been replaced by a storm of emotion, the hurt and anger he felt for being deceived surging to the surface. We've been risking everything, every step of the way, and you let us believe that we were on the right path. You let us think we were fighting for something noble, while you were playing us for someone else's game. His words cut through the tension in the room, leaving a silence in their wake, the air thick with the implications of his betrayal. Dorian's face twisted with regret, his eyes darting nervously between Adrian and Serena, as if searching for some way to explain himself, to make sense of the mess he had made. I didn't want to put you in this position, he said quietly, his voice a mix of guilt and fear. I thought I could find a way to stop it without dragging you into it, but the longer I kept you in the dark, the more control they gained. There's more at stake here than just the prophecy, more than just breaking a curse. The figure I've been working for, they're after the power hidden within the heart of the reef. They want to harness it for their own purposes, to control the magic, to reshape the world in their image. His words hung heavily between them, the gravity of the situation sinking in with each passing second. Serena's expression darkened as she processed the information. So all this time, we've been working to break a curse that isn't just about freeing the heart, it's about controlling it, she said, her voice cold, though the fire in her eyes burned bright. The revelation cut deeper than any of the trials they had faced. Their entire mission had been tainted by the manipulation of someone they had once trusted, and the stakes were higher than they had ever imagined. And you let us play right into their hands, she added, the accusation biting. You kept feeding us bits and pieces of truth, just enough to keep us moving forward, while all along you knew what we were truly up against. Adrian's jaw tightened as he turned to Serena, the fire of betrayal still burning in his chest, but also something else, an uneasy realization. If what Dorian's saying is true, then we've been walking into a trap from the start. The prophecy, the curse, the keys, they were all part of this figure's plan. They manipulated the course of events, made sure we followed the path they set out for us. And now we're at a crossroads, where everything we thought we knew about our mission is called into question. His voice dropped to a more somber tone. The heart's power isn't just a source of creation or destruction, it's the key to something much larger, something dangerous. And now, we have to decide whether we can trust Dorian, and if we can, how we stop what's already been set in motion. The allies' voice quivered with regret as they spoke, each word laced with the weight of a decision that had spiraled out of control. I didn't know, they said, their gaze dropping to the floor as if the very act of looking Adrian and Serena in the eye might shatter what little trust remained. I was promised protection from my family, a future where we wouldn't have to fear the forces that lurked in the shadows. At first, it seemed like a simple arrangement, just gathering information here and there. But the deeper I got, the more I realized how dangerous the situation really was. By the time I understood the full extent of the consequences, it was already too late to back out. Their voice faltered, as if the realization had become too much to bear. Adrian and Serena stood in stunned silence, the gravity of the allies' confession weighing heavily on them. Serena's brow furrowed in disbelief, though her heart stirred with a mixture of sympathy and frustration. "So you were willing to put us all at risk, just to protect your family?" she asked, the sharp edge in her voice belying the hurt that simmered beneath the surface. "You played a dangerous game, not realizing that by helping them, you were only feeding into their plan to control something far more powerful than we ever imagined." Her words were calm, but there was a fire in her eyes, the anger of being betrayed by someone they had trusted. The ally nodded, their expression haunted. "It wasn't supposed to go this far. I thought I could control it, that I could keep my hands clean while still securing a better future. But the figure I was working for, they believe that the heart of the reef's power is the key to reshaping the world, to gaining dominion over the elements, and all the forces tied to it. They've been manipulating the prophecy for generations, using it as a roadmap to gain access to the heart's magic. They think that if they can control the heart, they'll be unstoppable." A shiver ran through them as they spoke, the magnitude of the power they had become entangled with finally sinking in. Adrian's face hardened with a mix of anger and disbelief, his mind racing to comprehend the implications of their betrayal. "You're telling us that everything we've been fighting for, everything we've worked towards, has been manipulated by someone who wants to control the heart of the reef?" he asked, his voice rising with intensity. "That all these trials, the prophecy, the keys, they were never about breaking a curse. They were about manipulating us into doing their bidding, leading us right to the heart." He shook his head in frustration, his fists clenching at his sides. "We've been pawns in a much larger game, and now we have to stop this figure before they can seize control of the heart's power." Serena's gaze was steady, her expression resolute as she met the allies' eyes. The betrayal, though painful, had only sharpened her focus. "We've been betrayed," she said, her voice unwavering. "But we can't let this stop us. We've come too far to turn back now." Her hand clenched into a fist at her side, the fire of her determination burning through her. "We need to expose this figure for who they truly are. We need to stop their plans before they can manipulate the prophecy and use the heart's power for their own ends." The weight of their task felt heavier now, but the clarity of their purpose had never been more focused. Adrian stood by her side, his face hardening as he took in her words. The betrayal had stung, but Serena's resolve sparked something within him. He knew what was at stake now, more than just their personal safety or the prophecy's success. The entire world could be at risk if this unknown figure succeeded in their ambitions. "We know what they want, and we know how they've been using us," Adrian said, his voice cold with anger but laced with determination. "We've proven ourselves worthy of the trials and the quest. Now, we must use that to our advantage and turn the tables. The heart of the reef belongs to no one but nature itself, and we will make sure it stays that way." The allies stood in silence, watching as the bond between Adrian and Serena solidified further. They had already been through so much, and now, in the face of betrayal, their unity was the one thing that couldn't be broken. "You're right," the ally said quietly, a note of regret still lingering in their voice. "You need to stop them. I never thought it would go this far, but now I see there's no turning back. If there's any chance to right this wrong, it's in your hands. You're the ones the prophecy truly meant for. You have the power to defeat them, to stop their plan." The allies' words carried an air of defeat, but also a sense of surrender, as though they were finally ready to help in any way they could. Serena glanced at Adrian, their eyes meeting in a silent understanding. The path ahead was clear, though fraught with danger. They had come to the brink of unraveling a great power, only to find themselves at the center of a much larger, darker plot. But together, they would face this new challenge as they had faced every trial before, with unwavering commitment and a shared purpose. "Let's move," Serena said, her voice quiet but firm. "We've got a world to save." And with that, they turned toward the next step in their journey, their resolve stronger than ever before. Adrian's jaw tightened as he processed the gravity of the situation. The betrayal was more than just a personal setback. It was a direct threat to everything they had worked for. His mind raced, considering their options, but his resolve was unshakable. "We need to find out who this person is and what their true intentions are," he said, his voice steady but laced with determination. "We've already faced enough challenges. We can't afford any more interference, especially not now." His gaze swept over their surroundings, as though the very air itself carried the weight of the stakes ahead. Every moment felt like it counted, and they couldn't waste any time. Serena stood tall beside him, the lines of determination etched across her face. The trust they had once placed in their ally had been shattered, but it had also fueled a new sense of urgency. "The prophecy has already been altered by this person's interference. We need to uncover the full extent of their involvement, who they're working for and what their ultimate goal is. Only then can we figure out how to stop them." She glanced at Adrian, their bond stronger than ever, and felt the weight of their shared responsibility. They were no longer just seeking the keys. They were fighting for something much greater than themselves, something that could affect the fate of the entire reef. Their minds were set on the same goal, but the path to uncovering the truth was clouded with uncertainty. They needed answers, but getting them wouldn't be easy. "If we're going to confront this figure," Adrian continued, his eyes narrowing, "we need to be smarter than they expect. We can't rush in blindly. There's a lot at stake, and I don't trust that we've learned everything we need to know yet." His voice was low but firm, and it was clear that he was prepared to go to whatever lengths were necessary to unmask the truth and protect their mission. He had always trusted their instincts, and now, more than ever, those instincts would be their guiding light. Serena nodded, her focus unwavering as she turned to the ally. "We'll need to gather more information, and we'll need your help," she said. The allies' past actions weighed heavily on her, but she knew they could not afford to let their past betrayal cloud the future. "We need to know everything you've learned, everything you've been told. If you want to make this right, this is where you start." There was no anger in her voice, only a quiet determination that mirrored Adrian's. The time for hesitation had passed. It was time to uncover the truth and forge ahead, no matter the cost. The allies' face was drawn with regret, their eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and fear. They shifted uneasily under Serena and Adrian's intense gaze. "I understand," they said softly, their voice cracking under the weight of their confession. "I'll help you with whatever information I have. I know I've betrayed your trust, and for that, I'm truly sorry." The words felt heavy, laden with the burden of their actions. "I only ask for your forgiveness," the ally continued, their tone earnest, "and that you ensure my family's safety. They've been innocent in all of this, and I fear for them if this situation escalates." Serena studied their face closely, her sharp eyes reading the sincerity behind the plea. She could see the remorse in the allies' expression, but she knew that actions spoke louder than words. Still, there was no room for hesitation. "You'll get your chance to make things right," she replied, her voice calm but firm. "But we have no time for mistakes now. If you want our help, you need to start by giving us everything. No more secrets, no more half-truths." She could feel the weight of her own anger simmering beneath the surface, but she tempered it with practicality. Their mission was too important to be derailed by emotions, no matter how justified. Adrian stepped forward, his posture tense but resolute. His gaze was unwavering as he locked eyes with their former ally. "We can't afford to let personal feelings cloud this," he said, his voice steady and filled with purpose. "If you truly want to help, you'll give us everything you know about this figure, who they are, where they are, and what they want. We need to act quickly, and we need to make sure we don't walk into any more traps." There was no room for compromise in Adrian's voice. The stakes were too high, and the allies' cooperation was now a critical element in their success. The ally nodded, their face pale and lined with fear, but there was a spark of determination in their eyes now as well. "I will," they said, their voice firmer than before. "I owe you both more than I can repay, but I'll start by telling you everything. I'll give you the information I've gathered, and I'll do whatever I can to help you stop this." With that promise, they turned and began rummaging through a pile of papers on a nearby table, clearly prepared to divulge everything they had once kept hidden. Serena and Adrian exchanged a look, knowing that this new, reluctant ally could be their only hope in the battle to come. Adrian and Serena stood in silence for a moment, processing the gravity of the situation. Despite the betrayal, they understood that their mission could not afford to waste time on vengeance. The allies' information, though earned through deception, was now crucial to their next steps. Serena's sharp mind was already piecing together the potential implications of what they had just learned. "We need to approach this strategically," she said, her voice calm but filled with urgency. "The sooner we expose this figure and stop their manipulation of the prophecy, the better." Adrian nodded, his expression determined. The anger from earlier still simmered beneath his composed exterior, but he knew that their best chance to succeed lay in using the allies' knowledge. "We'll need to be careful," he said, his voice low and deliberate. "We don't know who this figure is or how much influence they have, but we can't risk walking into a trap. We have to use the information you have to guide our next move." He turned to the ally, who was now seated at the table, quietly sorting through the papers they had pulled from their hiding spot. The weight of their past actions was clear in the allies' posture, but now was not the time for hesitation. The ally began to speak, their voice trembling slightly as they explained what they knew. "The figure who's been manipulating the prophecy is someone with considerable power, more than I realized at first. They've been orchestrating events from behind the scenes, ensuring that everything falls into place to serve their own ends. They want the heart of the reef's power to reshape the world according to their vision." As the allies spoke, Adrian and Serena listened intently, their minds already racing to connect the dots. The information was fragmented, but it provided a clearer picture of the danger they faced. "We need to find out who this is and where they are," Serena said firmly. "If we can track them down, we might be able to stop this before it's too late." With the allies' cooperation, they began to sort through the information. Maps were spread out on the table, and scrolls filled with cryptic annotations were carefully examined. Every scrap of information had the potential to reveal something important. Adrian's eyes narrowed as he traced his finger over one of the maps. "This location," he said, pointing to a marked spot on the map. "It matches the description we found in the ancient text, the one that spoke about the final key. This could be where they're hiding, or at least where we can find more answers." Serena nodded in agreement. "It's a lead, and it's the only one we've got for now. Let's prepare ourselves for whatever comes next." Together, they moved forward, knowing that despite the weight of betrayal and the danger ahead, they were more united than ever in their mission. As Adrian and Serena continued their investigation, the gravity of their situation grew clearer by the hour. Every piece of information they uncovered pointed to a far-reaching plot that threatened not only their quest but the very balance of the heart of the reef. The figure they had been chasing wasn't just a shadowy puppet master. They were a dangerous force with the means to manipulate the prophecy for their own gain. The more they pieced together from the allies' intel, the more they realized that this person's reach extended far beyond their initial suspicions, with networks of influence scattered across key regions connected to the heart. The deeper they dug, the more unsettling it became. It wasn't just about controlling the power of the heart. It was about reshaping the world according to this individual's vision, using the prophecy as a tool to unlock unimaginable power. Adrian's jaw clenched as he absorbed the implications. If they succeed in controlling the heart's magic, they could shift the balance of the entire realm. He murmured, eyes scanning the documents they had laid out. Serena's expression was equally grim, her thoughts racing as she tried to make sense of the complexities. "The prophecy was never meant to be manipulated like this," she said, the weight of their mission settling over her. "It was meant to restore balance, not to let one person control everything." Their ally, who had been following along quietly, seemed more and more uncertain as the details unfolded. "I never knew the full extent of their plans," the ally confessed, their voice tinged with guilt. "At first, it was just about tracking your progress. But then I realized they were planning to use the heart's power to rewrite the world's very foundation. And their voice trailed off, a mixture of fear and regret flickering in their eyes. Adrian's gaze softened, but his resolve didn't waver. "You're not the one pulling the strings here. We need to focus on stopping them, together." As they continued to connect the dots, Serena's mind was already working through the next steps. They were no longer dealing with isolated events. They were up against a powerful adversary with the means to manipulate not just their journey, but the fate of the entire realm. The stakes had risen exponentially. "We need to stop them before they can make their move," Serena said, her voice firm. "If they get their hands on the remaining keys, there's no telling what they could do." Adrian nodded in agreement, determination setting into his features. "Then let's find them first," he replied. "We can't waste any more time. It's all or nothing now." Their mission had never been more urgent, and they knew that the path ahead would be fraught with challenges they hadn't even begun to imagine. With the ally now fully committed to aiding them, Adrian and Serena set a plan in motion to uncover the mastermind behind the betrayal. They knew time was of the essence, and the web of deception they were tangled in had grown far more complex. Their focus shifted from gathering the remaining keys to unraveling the true identity and motives of the figure manipulating the prophecy. Each step they took, guided by the allies' insider knowledge, brought them closer to exposing the person who had been orchestrating events from the shadows. The danger that loomed over them now was greater than they had imagined, but it only steeled their determination. As they traveled, Serena's thoughts were never far from the prophecy. The weight of their new understanding pressed on her mind. This wasn't just about breaking the curse or restoring balance to the heart of the reef. It was about stopping a catastrophic shift in the balance of power. The powerful figure who had orchestrated the betrayal sought to use the heart's power for their own control, and that threat had become all too real. Adrian's presence beside her, his quiet strength and unwavering resolve, was a constant reminder that together they could face whatever challenges came next. Their bond had already proven to be a force that could not be easily broken, and it would be their greatest weapon in the battle ahead. With every piece of information they gathered, Adrian could feel the weight of the stakes growing heavier. Their journey had never been simple, but now it felt as though the entire world rested on their shoulders. The powerful figure behind the conspiracy was more dangerous than they had originally thought. Their reach extended into high places, and the threat of them obtaining the remaining keys loomed over everything they did. But Adrian refused to let that fear take root. He had seen the depth of Serena's resolve, and he knew that their combined strength would be enough to face whatever came next. They had come too far to back down now. Their journey was no longer just about gathering artifacts or solving riddles. It was a race to stop a force that would rewrite the very fabric of their world. As the days passed, their strategy began to take shape. They would track down every lead, expose every secret, and do whatever it took to ensure that the heart of the reef remained free from the grasp of those who sought to exploit its power. The ally had provided them with critical intelligence, but they still had to move carefully, knowing that the mastermind was likely watching their every move. There was no room for mistakes. Their mission had taken on a new urgency. But with each passing day, Adrian and Serena's resolve grew stronger, united in their determination to protect the heart and restore balance to the world. Chapter 23: Emotional Conflicts. The sun cast a warm, golden hue over the quaint seaside town, its rays shimmering across the cobblestone streets and the gently rolling waves of the sea. The idyllic setting contrasted sharply with the urgency that gripped Adrian and Serena as they continued their quest. With every step, they grew more focused on uncovering the true mastermind behind the betrayal that had threatened to derail their mission. The weight of their responsibility hung heavy on their shoulders, but they pressed on, knowing that the fate of the heart of the reef and the balance of their world depended on their success. Yet, despite their resolve, the shadows of uncertainty began to creep in, introducing an unexpected challenge neither of them had foreseen. As they walked through the town, their minds preoccupied with the task at hand, they were met with a familiar face, one that belonged to someone they had once considered an ally. It was the same person who had helped them gather information and supplies earlier in their journey. This encounter, however, was anything but a simple exchange. The air between them felt thick with unspoken tension, and a fleeting glance from their former ally raised new questions that made Serena's pulse quicken. There was something different about the way the person looked at them now, an unsettling shift that suggested more than just a passing hello. It was as if they were hiding something something that might alter the course of their mission in ways they couldn't yet comprehend. Adrian noticed the change too. His instincts were sharp, honed by their countless trials, and they screamed that something was off. He exchanged a wary glance with Serena, and they both understood without words that they needed to proceed carefully. The town, with its picturesque streets and peaceful exterior, had always felt like a safe haven. But now, it felt as though they were standing on the edge of a precipice, where one wrong move could send them tumbling into the unknown. They had trusted this person once, but trust was a luxury they could no longer afford. The sudden realization that they might be dealing with a deeper betrayal than they had originally suspected made the town feel more like a trap than a sanctuary. Despite their suspicions, they had little choice but to continue with their investigation. As they walked further into the town, their path leading them toward the library where they had uncovered the first signs of betrayal, the air seemed to grow thicker, as if the very atmosphere was closing in around them. They couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, and every street they turned down felt like a new layer of complexity added to their already tangled mission. The warmth of the sun, once comforting, now seemed to mock their growing unease. The peaceful town had become a maze of uncertainty, where every friendly face could be hiding a dangerous secret, and every step forward brought them closer to a confrontation they were not yet prepared for. The challenge that had surfaced was no longer just about tracking down the mastermind behind the betrayal. It was about determining who they could trust in a world that was rapidly growing more treacherous. As Adrian and Serena exchanged looks, both understanding the weight of the situation, they realized that their journey had taken an unexpected turn. It was no longer just about the heart of the reef or breaking the curse. It was about survival, deception, and the slow, creeping realization that every ally could be a potential enemy. And in this shifting landscape, their bond had never been more critical. They needed each other now more than ever, not only to uncover the truth but to navigate the perilous road ahead. Their journey had taken them through countless trials, each one testing their strength, resolve, and unity. From the moment they set out together, there was a sense of camaraderie, but as the days passed, that bond deepened in ways neither had anticipated. The challenges they had faced had forged a connection between them that went beyond mere partnership or shared goals. The stakes were high, but so too were the moments of vulnerability they shared along the way, whether it was in the silence after a fierce battle or the quiet exchange of glances as they processed the weight of their mission. It was in those fleeting moments that their understanding of each other grew, creating a bond rooted in trust, respect, and a shared purpose. The emotional connection between Adrian and Serena had blossomed in unexpected ways. They had begun to rely on each other not just for support in their quest, but also for emotional grounding in a world that was increasingly uncertain. Serena had always been strong and independent, but in Adrian's presence, she had found someone who understood her deeper fears and desires. Adrian, too, found solace in Serena's unwavering determination and strength. Their mutual respect had slowly turned into something more profound, a connection that had started as a partnership and evolved into something that neither could ignore. They were no longer just companions on a dangerous journey. They were becoming something more, something neither of them had fully anticipated when they first met. As their emotional connection grew, so did the complexity of their feelings. What had once been clear and straightforward now seemed clouded by the weight of their growing attachment. They had both come to care deeply for each other, but amidst the chaos of their quest, it was becoming increasingly difficult to navigate those emotions. Every touch, every shared glance, felt charged with unspoken meaning. In the quiet moments between tasks, when they weren't strategizing or fending off new threats, the tension between them simmered just beneath the surface. Neither of them had the luxury of time to fully process their feelings, but it was clear that the bond they shared had moved far beyond mere friendship. Despite the growing emotional closeness, both Adrian and Serena remained focused on the mission. The stakes of their quest could not be ignored, and the power of the heart of the reef was still at the forefront of their minds. Yet, it was becoming harder to keep their emotions in check. There were moments when the shared weight of their bond felt like an unspoken force between them, making it hard to separate their personal feelings from the larger, more dangerous reality they were navigating. Each time they faced a new challenge, they were reminded that the curse, the prophecy, and and their mission to restore balance were matters that transcended their growing feelings for each other. But in the moments of quiet solitude, it was hard to ignore the fact that their partnership was evolving into something more profound. The growing emotional connection between them became both a source of strength and a complication. They had learned to rely on each other in ways that were essential to their survival. But now, those same feelings were creating an internal struggle. As they moved forward, they were forced to confront the reality of their bond. Would they continue to focus solely on their mission, or would they allow their connection to evolve and complicate the path ahead? Each day brought them closer to their goal, but it also brought them closer to each other in ways that were both beautiful and fraught with tension. It was a delicate balance they would have to navigate, one that would ultimately shape the rest of their journey. As Adrian and Serena walked through the town's cobbled streets, the weight of their growing emotions was hard to ignore. The town, with its quaint houses and the scent of the sea in the air, seemed to mirror the shift in their dynamic. Once, their conversations had been focused on their mission, the details of their quest, the information they had uncovered, and the steps they needed to take next. But now, those conversations had taken on a more personal undertone. They found themselves sharing more than just strategies and plans. They spoke of memories from their past, their hopes for the future, and the quiet dreams they had kept hidden for so long. These conversations, once practical and task-oriented, had shifted, revealing a vulnerability neither had expected. The change in their relationship was evident in the little things. The way their laughter now came more easily, filling the spaces between their words with warmth. It wasn't just the usual banter that accompanied their shared moments. It was a deeper sense of camaraderie, an understanding that had grown out of their shared experiences. Each time they laughed together, it felt like a small reprieve from the weight of their mission, a reminder that there was more to life than the ever-present danger surrounding them. Their concern for each other had become more pronounced as well, each one noticing the smallest shifts in the other's mood or health. It was as if their emotional connection had given them a heightened sense of empathy, making them more attuned to each other's needs and struggles. Their glances, too, had begun to linger a little longer than before. What had once been quick exchanges, moments where they merely acknowledged the other's presence, had now become something deeper. When their eyes met, there was an unspoken understanding that passed between them. Sometimes, a glance would be enough to convey a shared thought, a silent communication that had evolved from their earlier partnership. And other times, those lingering glances spoke volumes of the unacknowledged feelings they were both wrestling with. It was a subtle but undeniable shift, one that neither could fully explain but both were keenly aware of. The quiet moments between them had taken on new significance. When they paused in the middle of their tasks or walked side by side through the town's winding streets, the silence was often comfortable, filled with a sense of connection that transcended words. It was as if the very air around them was charged with the unspoken bond they shared. In the past, silence might have felt awkward or uncomfortable, but now it felt natural, like an extension of their growing relationship. They found themselves walking a fine line between the necessity of focusing on their mission and the deepening emotions that were threatening to pull them further from their goal. The uncertainty of how to navigate these feelings weighed on both of them, but the connection they shared made it difficult to pull away from. Despite the quiet tensions that arose from their growing emotions, Adrian and Serena continued to work seamlessly together. Their partnership, forged through trials and danger, remained at the core of their relationship. They were still united in their quest to break the curse and restore balance to the heart of the reef, but the path forward had become more complicated. With each passing day, the lines between their personal feelings and their mission blurred more, leaving them to wonder how their bond would ultimately shape the outcome of their journey. The road ahead was fraught with danger, but the connection between them had become a strength they couldn't ignore, nor did they want to. One evening, as the soft, golden light of the setting sun bathed the small seaside inn, Adrian and Serena sat on the porch in an unusual silence. The waves lapped gently against the shore, their rhythmic sound the only noise that interrupted the stillness. The sun's descent painted the sky with shades of pink, purple, and amber, yet the beauty of the moment did little to ease the weight pressing on their hearts. It was a rare moment of peace amidst the chaos of their quest, but the serenity only seemed to highlight the unrest within them. Serena's eyes remained fixed on the horizon, yet her gaze was distant, as if the view before her held no answers to the questions swirling in her mind. Her thoughts, far from the tranquil scene before her, were consumed by the complexities of their journey. The challenges they had faced, the betrayal they had uncovered, and the growing tension between them all seemed to weigh heavily on her. The deeper connection she felt for Adrian was undeniable, but it also created a storm of emotions she wasn't sure how to navigate. What had once been clear, working together as partners to complete their mission, had now become tangled with feelings she had tried to suppress. How could they continue their quest with such a connection between them? And what did it mean for their mission if these feelings, this bond, was something more than either of them had anticipated? Serena's fingers drummed absently on the armrest of the chair, her mind racing with conflicting thoughts. She had always prided herself on her clarity, on her ability to focus on the task at hand, but now that focus was slipping. Adrian had become more than just an ally in their shared mission. He had become a presence she couldn't ignore. The quiet moments they spent together, the unspoken understanding they shared, had drawn her in, but the fear of what that might mean for their quest held her back. What if this bond, this growing attraction, was a distraction? She couldn't afford to lose sight of the bigger picture, no matter how strong the pull between them. Adrian, sensing the shift in the air, watched her closely, his own thoughts mirroring hers. He could see the tension in her posture, the way she seemed to distance herself, even as they sat side by side. He had noticed the changes in their relationship too, how the quiet moments had become charged with something unspoken, how their partnership had evolved into something more. He had tried to focus on the mission, to keep his emotions in check, but the truth was that being near Serena, working alongside her, had brought out feelings he couldn't ignore. Yet he feared that giving in to those feelings might jeopardize everything they had worked for. The heart of the reef, the curse, and the prophecy were too important to allow personal emotions to interfere. The silence between them stretched, filled with unspoken words and heavy thoughts. Neither of them knew how to broach the topic that had become so difficult to ignore. Finally, Serena broke the stillness, her voice low and uncertain. Adrian, do you ever wonder if we're becoming too close to this? To each other, I mean. Her words hung in the air, fragile and vulnerable, as if daring the evening to swallow them. It was a question neither had dared to ask out loud, but it was the one that had been on both their minds for days. The truth was, they were standing at a crossroads, and the path forward was unclear. Would they continue to walk together as partners, or would the weight of their emotions tear them apart? Adrian's voice broke the heavy silence between them, low and filled with an intensity that Serena hadn't expected. He turned to face her, his gaze unwavering as he spoke. Serena, we've been through so much together. I can't help but feel something more than just camaraderie. His words hung in the air, charged with an honesty that made the evening feel heavier, the weight of them pressing into the space between them. Serena's breath caught slightly as she turned her gaze from the horizon to him, her heart skipping a beat at the unexpected admission. For a moment, neither of them spoke, as if the world had paused to allow the words to settle. Serena's mind raced, her pulse quickening. She had known, deep down, that the connection between them had shifted in subtle ways over the past weeks. It had started with small moments, shared looks, lingering touches, and gradually it had grown into something undeniable. But to hear Adrian voice it so plainly, so vulnerably, left her momentarily stunned. She had tried to suppress the emotions that had been quietly blossoming between them, focusing instead on the mission and the trials they had yet to face. Now, with his confession, everything felt more complicated. Serena swallowed, her throat tight as she gathered her thoughts. She had never been one to shy away from difficult conversations, but this was different. This wasn't just about their quest anymore. This was about their bond, about the feelings they both seemed to be trying so hard to ignore. Adrian, she began, her voice soft but steady. I've felt it too. I've tried not to, but... Her words trailed off, and she looked down at her hands in her lap, unsure of how to put the tumult of emotions into words. She could feel the weight of their shared journey pressing on her, the knowledge that they had been through so much together only to now face this new, unexpected challenge. What did this mean for them, for their mission? Adrian's gaze softened as he listened, the rawness of her response striking a chord within him. He reached out, his hand resting gently on hers, an unspoken gesture of understanding and solidarity. "I know it's complicated," he said quietly, his thumb tracing small circles over the back of her hand. "This quest, this prophecy, it's everything we've worked for, and I don't want to jeopardize it. But I also don't want to keep pretending that what we feel isn't real." His voice was steady but filled with a quiet intensity, the truth of his words sinking into both of them. For a moment, the world outside seemed to fade as they were left alone in their thoughts and emotions, the quiet sounds of the waves no longer filling the silence in quite the same way. Serena's heart pounded in her chest, the conflict within her growing stronger. Her eyes lifted to meet his, and for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to truly look at him, not just as a partner in this journey, but as someone who had become a pivotal part of her world. She could feel the magnetic pull between them, stronger than the tides that rolled in and out before them. "I don't know what to do with this," she admitted, her voice vulnerable. "I don't want to lose sight of what we're here to do, but I can't ignore what's happening between us. It feels like we're at a crossroads, and I don't know where it leads." Adrian nodded, his hand still resting on hers, the warmth of it grounding her in the moment. "Neither do I," he said, his voice a little more distant now, as if the weight of their shared dilemma had settled into his chest. "But we can't ignore it anymore. Whatever happens, we face it together. We'll figure this out, Serena, just like we've done everything else. And no matter where it leads, we'll keep moving forward, one step at a time." The sincerity in his words was unmistakable, and in that moment, Serena realized that, regardless of the uncertainty that lay ahead, they had already crossed the threshold together, one that no trial or challenge could take away. Serena's heart raced as she turned to face Adrian, her breath catching in her throat. The confession she had been too hesitant to acknowledge now hung between them, and she felt the weight of it pressing against her chest. "I've felt it too," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking the truth aloud would make it even more real. Her eyes met his, and for a brief moment, the world outside seemed to disappear, leaving only the two of them standing on that porch, bound by something deeper than mere duty. "Our connection has grown stronger, but it's difficult to reconcile these feelings with the urgency of our mission." The words felt heavy, a mixture of longing and frustration wrapped into one, as she tried to navigate the turbulent waters of her heart. The silence that followed was thick, each of them processing what had just been said. Serena could feel the tension between them, not in a negative way, but in the realization that what they shared was undeniable and yet fraught with complications. Their quest, their purpose, the very reason they had come together, was still urgent, still consuming. She had never expected to find something like this amidst the chaos and the danger, and now it felt like a new obstacle, one she wasn't sure how to face. She had tried to keep her emotions in check, to push aside the growing affection that had blossomed over the course of their trials. But now, it was impossible to ignore. Adrian's gaze softened, and he took a step closer, his presence comforting despite the weight of the conversation. "I understand," he said quietly, his voice steady, yet filled with the same uncertainty she felt. "This mission means everything to us. I know the stakes. But I also know that what we've built between us, the bond we share, is just as real. I can't pretend it's not there, and I don't want to." His words were sincere, a quiet confession of his own. There was a vulnerability in the way he spoke, as if he, too, was struggling to make sense of it all. "I don't want to lose focus, Serena. But I also don't want to keep ignoring this, whatever it is between us." Serena swallowed, her thoughts racing. She wanted to say so many things, wanted to find the right words to express the confusion and the depth of her feelings. But it was as though the gravity of their mission, of the curse and the prophecy, was constantly pulling her back, reminding her of the path they had chosen to walk. "I don't know what this means for us," she admitted, her voice raw with emotion. "We can't afford to be distracted, not now, not with everything at stake. But I can't deny that I feel something, Something that goes beyond just being partners in this quest. She looked at him, her expression softening. What if it jeopardizes everything? What if these feelings become a weakness? Adrian reached for her hand, his touch grounding her in a moment. We won't let it jeopardize the mission, he assured her, his thumb gently brushing over her knuckles. But we can't ignore it either. We've faced so much together, Serena. We've shared victories, losses, and everything in between. This bond between us is part of that. Whatever it is, we'll find a way to make it work. We'll keep moving forward together, and we'll deal with whatever comes next when the time comes. His words were simple, yet powerful, and Serena felt a spark of hope flicker inside her. Maybe they didn't have all the answers yet, but she knew one thing for certain. They weren't alone in this. And for now, that was enough. Adrian's expression softened, a mixture of longing and concern etched across his face as he spoke. His eyes met Serena's with an intensity that made her heart flutter, but also filled her with an uneasy tension. I've been trying to keep my focus on our goal, he continued, his voice steady yet tinged with vulnerability. But it's hard to ignore what's happening between us. His gaze flickered away for a moment, as if searching for the right words, before returning to her. It's as if our emotions are complicating everything. The weight of his words settled in the space between them, and for a brief moment, Serena could feel the unspoken tension that had been building between them. It was clear that he, too, had been grappling with the same feelings, even if he hadn't yet fully allowed himself to acknowledge them. Serena took a deep breath, trying to steady the racing thoughts in her mind. She understood exactly what he meant, how the connection they had forged during their journey had become something more than just camaraderie. It had grown into something deeper, something neither of them had expected. The emotional bond they shared was undeniable, and it seemed to be creeping into every decision they made, every moment they spent together. She had tried to maintain her focus on the mission, to block out the feelings that were growing stronger with each passing day, but it was becoming more and more difficult to push them aside. I know, she admitted quietly, her voice tinged with the same uncertainty. It's been hard to keep it separate, hasn't it? I thought if we just focused on the task at hand, the rest would sort itself out. But it hasn't. She looked away for a moment, her gaze fixed on the horizon as if seeking answers from the sea. I don't know how to reconcile it all. Our feelings, the mission, the danger. Adrian's voice was gentle when he spoke again, as if he was afraid of adding to the weight of her thoughts. Maybe we're not meant to sort it out right now, he suggested, his tone soft but firm. We've been through so much together, Serena, and I don't want what's between us to become a burden. I don't want to lose sight of why we're here. There's too much at stake. He paused for a moment, his fingers lightly brushing against the edge of her hand. But I also don't want to keep pretending that this connection we have doesn't exist. His voice faltered slightly, as if he, too, was trying to make sense of the whirlwind of emotions swirling between them. Serena turned back to face him, her heart heavy with the realization of just how much their journey had changed them. She had always known there would be challenges, both external and internal, but she hadn't anticipated the way her feelings for Adrian would grow so complicated. It feels like every decision we make now is influenced by this tension, she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. Like no matter how hard I try to keep my emotions in check, they keep seeping through. And I don't want it to be a distraction, Adrian. I don't want it to jeopardize everything we've worked for. Her eyes searched his, looking for understanding, hoping that he could see just how much the weight of their mission meant to her. Adrian squeezed her hand gently, his touch both reassuring and comforting. We'll figure it out, he said quietly, his voice filled with resolve. Together, we'll keep moving forward. Whatever this is between us, it doesn't change our mission. It doesn't change what we need to do. We're in this together, Serena. And no matter what happens, we'll face it side by side. His words, simple yet powerful, seemed to calm the storm inside her. For a moment, everything else faded away, and all that remained was the undeniable connection between them. It was a bond that couldn't be ignored, but perhaps it didn't have to be. As long as they stood together, they would find a way to navigate the challenges ahead, both in their quest and in the feelings that had bloomed between them. Serena's gaze flickered to the ground, her brows furrowed in thought as she struggled to put her feelings into words. The weight of their mission loomed large, overshadowing everything else. "I feel the same way," she admitted, her voice tinged with a quiet vulnerability. "Our feelings for each other are growing, but I don't know how to reconcile them with the urgency of what we're facing." She met Adrian's eyes, her own filled with a mixture of uncertainty and resolve. It wasn't that she didn't want to acknowledge the bond between them, she felt it deeply, growing stronger with each passing day. But the path they were on was fraught with danger. The curse, the prophecy, the threat looming over the heart of the reef, all of it was too important to risk. She couldn't afford to let their personal connection derail them. Adrian, sensing her inner conflict, stayed quiet for a moment, his fingers resting against the railing of the porch. He, too, felt the undeniable pull between them, the connection that had only deepened as they faced the trials together. But Serena's words struck a chord within him. They both knew how fragile their situation was, how every choice they made could bring them closer to either success or failure. He turned toward her, his voice low but filled with the same determination. "I get it," he said, his tone understanding yet firm. "We can't let our emotions get in the way of our mission. I don't want to be distracted either. But it's hard to ignore what's between us, Serena. It feels like something we can't just push aside." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "But I understand. We'll keep our focus on the curse and the heart of the reef. Nothing else matters right now." Serena took a deep breath, trying to calm the turbulent thoughts in her mind. It wasn't just the mission that weighed on her. It was the fear of what might happen if they allowed their emotions to grow unchecked. They couldn't afford to be sidetracked. The prophecy and the curse were bigger than any personal connection they shared. Yet, every time she looked at Adrian, the connection between them grew harder to ignore. The laughter, the quiet moments of shared concern, the way their eyes would meet in the midst of their conversations, these things felt significant, like they were building towards something neither of them had expected. But was it the right time for it? Could they afford to let it change the course of their journey? "I don't want to jeopardize everything we've worked for," Serena continued, her voice barely above a whisper, the weight of her words heavy in the air. "We're so close to breaking the curse, to finally restoring the balance. We can't let anything, especially not our feelings, get in the way of that." She turned away from him for a moment, her eyes drifting back to the horizon. The sun had dipped lower, casting long shadows across the water, and she felt a pang of longing. The quiet beauty of the scene seemed to mock the storm inside her, the storm that raged not just from the dangers they faced, but from the emotions that threatened to become more than just a fleeting distraction. It wasn't just a matter of keeping their focus. It was a question of whether they could manage their hearts, while everything else seemed to spiral out of control. Adrian's hand, warm and steady, found hers. He gave it a reassuring squeeze, grounding her in that moment. "We will get through this," he said with quiet resolve. "We'll face everything together. We've made it this far because we've trusted each other, and that trust, that connection, it's what's kept us moving forward. I won't let anything pull us away from our mission. But I also won't pretend that this..." He gestured between them with a subtle nod. "Doesn't matter. We'll figure it out as we go. The curse is our priority, but we don't have to deny what's happening between us, Serena. We'll keep our focus, and we'll handle everything else as it comes." His words settled over her like a soft but firm promise, and for a brief moment, Serena allowed herself to feel the weight of that promise. They would face whatever came next, together. Adrian reached out, his hand brushing against hers with a tenderness that spoke volumes. Serena looked down at their joined hands, feeling the weight of the moment settle over her like a warm embrace. His words lingered in the air, carrying a gentle insistence. "But what if our feelings are a part of this journey?" he asked, his voice softer now, as though testing the very possibility of what he was suggesting. "What if they're meant to help us navigate the challenges we're facing?" He paused, watching her intently, his eyes searching for some hint of understanding, some indication that his thoughts were resonating with her. Serena's mind raced as she turned his words over in her mind. Could it be true? Was there more to their connection than just the bond forged in the heat of battle and the trials they had faced together? She felt the truth of their shared experiences, the depth of their partnership, but she had never allowed herself to consider that their growing feelings for each other might be a part of their mission, a necessary strength in the face of the curse and the obstacles they still had to overcome. She looked back up at him, seeing the sincerity in his gaze, and a flicker of uncertainty passed through her. Was it possible that the emotions she had tried so hard to keep in check might actually be the key to their success? Adrian gave her hand a reassuring squeeze, as if silently urging her to consider what he was suggesting. "I don't want to rush you or make this harder," he continued, his tone gentle but persistent. "But I believe that our connection, our bond, it's stronger than just a distraction. We've already faced so much together. Maybe this is part of the reason we were chosen for this journey. Maybe our feelings will give us the strength we need to face what lies ahead." His words were quiet but filled with conviction, and Serena couldn't help but feel the pull of what he was saying. The challenges they had already faced had only brought them closer, and perhaps, just perhaps, there was something more at play than just the prophecy and the curse. Serena remained quiet for a moment, her thoughts a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. She had always kept a part of herself guarded, focused solely on the mission, unwilling to let anything cloud her judgment. But Adrian's words were making her rethink that stance. Perhaps the emotional bond they shared wasn't something to be feared or dismissed. It could be the very thing that allowed them to push through the challenges ahead. She could feel it now, in the way their hands fit together so naturally, in the way their hearts seemed to beat in sync when they were close. It wasn't just an attraction, it was a deep, unwavering connection that had been forged through the fire of their trials. Could this connection truly be a part of their destiny? Finally, Serena met Adrian's gaze, her eyes softer now, the tension that had plagued her slowly easing. "Maybe you're right," she said quietly, her voice steady but tinged with vulnerability. "Maybe we're meant to face this together, not just as allies, but as something more. But we can't lose sight of the mission. The heart of the reef, the prophecy, everything we've worked for, it's still the most important thing." She squeezed his hand, her fingers entwining with his as a promise, not just to him, but to herself. They had a destiny to fulfill, a curse to break, and no matter what emotions lay between them, they would face it together. And maybe, just maybe, their bond would be the very thing that saw them through to the end. Serena looked down at their intertwined hands, her gaze fixed on the way their fingers meshed together, a simple but intimate connection that felt both grounding and unsettling. Her heart hammered in her chest as she tried to sort through the turmoil of emotions stirring within her. The closeness she shared with Adrian had grown over time, blossoming from a partnership forged in the heat of battle into something more, something that now felt both inevitable and dangerous. She had never been one to let personal feelings interfere with a mission, and yet, with each passing day, it was becoming harder to separate the person standing beside her from the partner she had sworn to protect. "I don't know," she said softly, her voice strained with uncertainty. "It feels like every time we get closer, it complicates things." She paused, taking a deep breath as she tried to collect her thoughts. The weight of their quest was always present, a constant reminder that they were racing against time to break the curse and restore balance to the heart of the reef. Their bond, which had grown through shared struggles, had now become something more fragile. Serena couldn't shake the nagging feeling that their emotions, however real and deep, could become a weakness, something their enemies could exploit. The forces they were up against were not merciful, and those who sought the heart's power would stop at nothing to gain the upper hand. "Our emotions could be a vulnerability," she continued, her voice tinged with caution. "Our enemies might see it as a weakness and use it against us." Adrian remained silent for a moment, sensing the inner conflict she was grappling with. He understood her concerns, he shared them. The stakes were high, and every decision they made could alter the course of their mission. Yet, despite the danger that loomed over them, he couldn't deny the pull of the bond they had forged. He could see it in the way Serena's eyes softened when they spoke, in the way their conversations had grown more personal, more meaningful. There was no denying the strength of what was between them, but he knew the risks. He could feel the tension in her words, the fear of being vulnerable, of letting emotions get in the way of their greater purpose. He had seen it before, the price that came with letting one's heart lead the way. But isn't it possible that our connection could also make us stronger? Adrian asked quietly, his voice tinged with both hope and apprehension. He gently lifted her chin with his free hand, guiding her to meet his gaze. We've faced so many trials together, each one testing not just our strength, but our trust in each other. I believe that what we have between us could be the key to facing what's to come. The curse, the prophecy, it's all part of this, and we're part of it too. If we let fear dictate our actions, we might miss the very thing that will help us succeed. Serena's thoughts swirled in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Adrian's words, though comforting, brought no easy answers. The weight of their mission, the magnitude of the stakes, pressed heavily on her chest. Yet, there was something undeniable in the way their connection had grown, something more than just mutual respect or camaraderie. It was a force that had shaped their choices, their actions, and now, it seemed to be guiding them towards something greater. I don't want to lose sight of why we're here, she said finally, her voice firm despite the uncertainty. But maybe we can't ignore what we feel. Maybe our bond is part of this journey. She looked up at him, her expression softened by vulnerability and resolve. We'll have to be careful. We can't let it cloud our judgment, but maybe we need it, too. We need to find a way to balance both, to use our connection to fuel us, not hinder us. Adrian nodded, his expression a mix of understanding and relief. He could see that Serena's resolve had softened, that she was beginning to accept what they shared, not as a burden, but as a source of strength. We will, he agreed, his voice steady and reassuring. We'll find a way to make it work. Together. There was no turning back now, not from the mission they had set in motion, nor from the bond that had emerged between them. Whatever the future held, they would face it side by side, determined to succeed, not just for the heart of the reef, but for the connection that had grown between them. And that, he realized, might just be the key to their ultimate success. The air around Adrian and Serena seemed to crackle with unspoken words as they sat side by side, the weight of their shared silence pressing down on them. The tension between them was palpable, thick and suffocating, as if the very space they occupied was filled with the gravity of their internal struggles. Every glance exchanged, every word spoken, seemed charged with emotions they were both reluctant to acknowledge, but couldn't fully suppress. Their journey, so focused on the quest to break the curse and restore balance to the heart of the reef, had led them to this moment where personal feelings began to blur the lines of their mission. They were no longer just two allies working together. Something deeper had blossomed between them, something that neither of them had anticipated. Yet neither could fully embrace it without questioning the consequences of such a connection. Their conversation, sparse and carefully measured, was a reflection of the battle raging inside each of them. They both understood the risks involved, the stakes of their mission growing more critical with each passing day. Yet, there was an undeniable pull between them, something that seemed to bind them together not only in their shared purpose but in a way that reached beyond it. Adrian's voice was steady, but the vulnerability in his eyes betrayed the conflict within him. He had always been one to focus on the task at hand, to keep his emotions in check for the sake of the greater good. But now, with Serena by his side, he couldn't deny the way his heart quickened whenever their hands brushed, or how every shared moment felt like it was meant to lead them to something more. We can't let this distract us, he said, his words firm but laden with the weight of his own uncertainty. Serena, too, felt the strain of their growing bond. She had always prided herself on her ability to compartmentalize, to keep personal feelings separate from the mission. But as their journey had progressed, and as they had faced trial after trial together, that separation had become increasingly difficult. She could feel the warmth of Adrian's presence even when they were apart, could hear his voice in her mind when things grew uncertain. The affection she felt for him was becoming impossible to ignore, and yet, every time she allowed herself to give in to it, a voice inside her warned her of the dangers it posed. I know, she replied softly, her gaze fixed on the distant horizon. But it's hard. Every time I think I have it under control, it slips away again. It's like I'm losing focus. And I can't afford to do that. The bond between them had grown from mutual respect and shared goals into something far more complex. Their shared moments of laughter, their quiet exchanges of concern, and the way their eyes would meet in the midst of danger had all contributed to a deepening connection that neither of them had sought but both now felt undeniably. And yet, despite the warmth of their closeness, there was a lingering fear that this very connection could be their undoing. Serena's fingers curled around the fabric of her sleeve, a small, unconscious gesture of her internal conflict. She wanted to believe that what they shared could be a source of strength, but there was a constant fear that their emotions would cloud their judgment when they needed to be at their sharpest. If we let ourselves become too entangled in this, whatever this is, it could be used against us, she said, her voice trembling slightly with the weight of her fears. Adrian, sensing her hesitation, reached out and gently placed a hand over hers, grounding her with a simple touch. It was a small act, but one that spoke volumes in the silence between them. "We've made it this far because we've worked together, Serena," he said, his voice low but steady. "Our bond, whatever it is, hasn't made us weaker. If anything, it's made us stronger. But I understand your fear. I feel it too. The stakes are high, and we have to stay focused. But we don't have to do it alone. We have each other." Serena met his gaze then, and for the first time in what felt like days, the uncertainty seemed to lift slightly. There was truth in his words, a truth that resonated deep within her. They were in this together, and whatever emotions they had to navigate, they would face them side by side, stronger because of their connection, not despite it. The path ahead was unclear, but with Adrian by her side, Serena knew one thing for certain: she was not alone. The days that followed were marked by an unmistakable shift in the dynamic between Adrian and Serena. Their conversations, once straightforward and practical, began to carry an unspoken weight, a layer of tension that neither of them could completely ignore. While they still pressed on with their mission, scouring the town for information and preparing for the next phase of their journey, their interactions became more fraught, as if the very air between them had thickened with feelings they hadn't fully addressed. Every exchange, no matter how trivial, seemed to linger longer than necessary, charged with a quiet intensity that made it harder to concentrate on the task at hand. As they moved through their days, the emotional undercurrent between them became more evident. The quiet moments, where they would pause to rest or take in their surroundings, were often filled with unspoken words and sidelong glances. A simple touch on the arm, or a look exchanged over the maps would cause their hearts to race, and the intensity of their emotions often caught them off guard. The uncertainty that had plagued them before now seemed to be an ever-present companion, creeping into their conversations and decision-making. They found themselves second-guessing each move, unsure whether their motivations were being influenced by their growing feelings or the necessity of the quest itself. The struggle to maintain focus on the mission while managing their burgeoning emotions was increasingly difficult. Adrian, typically the more pragmatic of the two, found himself distracted by thoughts of Serena. His mind straying to moments when their hands brushed or their eyes met with unspoken understanding. The bond between them was undeniable, yet he questioned how much of it was built on the strength of their partnership and how much was driven by something deeper. Every time he felt a surge of affection or desire, he reminded himself of the danger they faced, the curse, the prophecy, the elusive figure they were chasing. Yet the pull of his emotions seemed impossible to ignore. Serena, too, wrestled with the tension that simmered between them. As someone who had always prided herself on her ability to compartmentalize, she found herself struggling to keep her emotions at bay. The more they worked together, the more her feelings for Adrian deepened, and it became increasingly difficult to push those feelings aside. She found herself distracted by his presence, the way his voice lingered in her mind even after he had spoken, or how his laughter seemed to bring light into the darkest corners of their journey. But just as quickly as her heart warmed at these thoughts, she was reminded of the stakes they faced, the curse, the deception, the greater mission at hand. Could she allow herself to become entangled in something that might weaken their resolve? Or was it possible that their connection could make them stronger? The emotional tension between them began to have a subtle yet undeniable impact on their decision-making and communication. Where they had once been able to strategize with ease, now there were moments of hesitation, of looking at one another as if searching for reassurance or confirmation of something neither of them could quite define. The ease with which they had once navigated their mission seemed to falter at times, as if the weight of their emotions had altered their judgment. They knew that their growing feelings were complicating things, yet neither was willing to confront them directly. For now, the unspoken tension remained, lingering between them like an invisible thread that both bound them together and kept them apart, making each moment feel as if it were teetering on the edge of something neither of them was ready to face. The weight of the growing tension between them finally broke when Serena, unable to contain her frustration any longer, snapped during one of their strategy discussions. The room, already filled with the pressure of their mission, seemed to crack under the intensity of her words. "We need to concentrate on finding the remaining keys," she said, her voice sharp, a raw edge of emotion cutting through the otherwise tense air. Her eyes, usually calm and measured, now burned with frustration as she met Adrian's gaze. "We can't afford to let personal feelings cloud your judgment." The words hung heavily in the air, and for a moment, there was a sharp silence as both of them processed the weight of what had been said. Adrian was taken aback by the sudden outburst, the sting of her words lingering longer than he cared to admit. He had felt the same emotional turbulence between them, but hearing it voiced aloud made the reality of their situation even more difficult to ignore. He opened his mouth to respond, but the words caught in his throat. There was a part of him that knew Serena was right. Their emotions were becoming a dangerous distraction, threatening to undo everything they had worked for. Yet, there was also a part of him that resented being told to push aside what had become such an undeniable force in his heart. His fingers gripped the edge of the table, a mixture of frustration and confusion tightening his chest. Serena, seeing the brief flash of hurt in his eyes, immediately regretted her outburst, but her frustration had reached a boiling point. She had tried to keep her emotions in check, to stay focused on the mission, but everything felt so tangled now. The constant push and pull between their growing connection and the urgency of their quest was eating away at her resolve. She knew that if they were to succeed, they needed to remain unclouded by distractions, but it was becoming more and more impossible to separate her feelings from the reality of their situation. She exhaled sharply, her body tense as she turned away, trying to regain control over the emotions that threatened to spill out. The silence stretched on, thick with unspoken words, until Adrian finally spoke. His voice was quieter than usual, his tone more measured, but there was an unmistakable edge of vulnerability beneath the surface. "I know you're right," he said, each word heavy with the weight of their unaddressed emotions. "But it's not that simple. These feelings, they're real, Serena. I can't just turn them off." The admission hung in the air, and Serena felt her heart tighten at the sincerity in his voice. She had been so focused on maintaining their professionalism that she hadn't truly allowed herself to acknowledge the depth of what was happening between them. Now that he had said it, the truth was undeniable. Serena turned back to face him, her expression softening, though the tension remained. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said, her voice quieter now, filled with an unexpected vulnerability. "But I'm scared. Scared that if we let our feelings get in the way, it will all fall apart. We've come too far to let anything derail us now." Adrian nodded slowly, understanding the fear behind her words, and for the first time in days, they found a brief moment of understanding between them. The unspoken tension had not disappeared, but there was a new awareness, a recognition that their bond, whether they liked it or not, was an integral part of their journey. They had both been avoiding it for too long, but now they had no choice but to face it together. Adrian's words came out sharper than he intended, a reflection of the frustration and confusion churning inside him. He was trying to remain focused, to keep his head clear for the sake of their mission, but it was becoming increasingly difficult. Every time he looked at Serena, he was reminded not only of their shared goals but of the connection that had grown between them. Her presence, once a comforting constant, had become a source of both strength and complication. "I'm trying, but it's not easy," he said, his voice tight, the rawness of his emotions leaking through. "Every time I look at you, I'm reminded of how much I care, and it's hard to separate that from our mission." Serena felt her breath catch at the vulnerability in his tone. She had known that their connection was deepening, but hearing him express it so openly made the reality of their situation hit her like a wave. The intensity of his feelings mirrored her own, and in that moment, she realized just how much she had been trying to suppress her emotions. Adrian's words forced her to confront the truth she had been avoiding, that their growing bond was no longer something they could ignore or easily compartmentalize. She lowered her gaze, unsure of how to respond. She wanted to comfort him, to reassure him that everything would be okay, but the weight of their mission still loomed large. The silence between them grew heavy, neither one of them knowing how to bridge the gap that had formed. Adrian was fighting to keep his composure, but the frustration was evident in his clenched fists. His heart was torn between two conflicting desires, to protect Serena and to see their mission through to the end. He couldn't afford to be distracted, but it felt like his feelings for her were becoming an inseparable part of the journey. The more they traveled together, the more the lines between duty and desire blurred. He wanted to be the person she needed, but at the same time, he couldn't deny the pull of his emotions, the undeniable draw he felt toward her. Serena, on the other hand, was struggling to find the right words. She understood the conflict in his voice, because it mirrored her own internal battle. The connection they shared was undeniable, but she had always prided herself on keeping her emotions in check, especially when it came to their mission. Now, faced with Adrian's raw honesty, she couldn't keep pretending that she was unaffected by their growing bond. She had been trying to separate her feelings from the task at hand, but it was impossible to ignore the truth any longer. She wanted to be there for him, to support him, but she also feared that if they didn't focus on the mission, they would both lose everything. Finally, Serena spoke, her voice softer, more vulnerable than it had been in days. "I don't want to lose sight of what we're doing, Adrian," she said, her words laced with quiet determination. "But I can't deny that. I care about you too, and it's confusing. It's all so much to carry." She glanced up at him then, her gaze searching his face for understanding. She had always been the practical one, the one who kept a level head, but in this moment, she wasn't sure if she could continue to compartmentalize her emotions. What they were experiencing, this growing bond, this deepening connection, was becoming impossible to ignore, and she wasn't sure how much longer they could keep pretending it didn't matter. The stakes of their mission were high, but so were the stakes of the emotions they were both grappling with. The argument, though short, was like a storm that left both of them feeling emotionally exhausted. Each word had been charged with the weight of their conflicting feelings, Adrian's frustration, Serena's confusion, and the unspoken tension that had been building between them for days. It wasn't just about the mission anymore. It was about something deeper, something neither of them had fully confronted until now. As the words hung in the air, the silence that followed was almost suffocating. Neither one of them could find a way to calm the storm that had erupted between them, and it left them both feeling raw and vulnerable, as though the air itself had shifted. Serena's heart still pounded, the sting of their exchange lingering in her chest. She hadn't wanted the argument to escalate, but there was so much at stake. The confusion, the frustration, it all boiled over. She wasn't sure how to reconcile her feelings for Adrian with the intense mission that lay ahead. She wanted to trust him, to rely on their partnership, but the personal connection they shared had started to blur the boundaries. She wasn't used to letting emotions run so freely, and the clash had forced her to confront the truth she had been avoiding. She wanted to be strong, to be the steady hand guiding them, but in that moment, she felt as if the ground beneath her was shifting too rapidly. Adrian, too, felt the weight of their argument bearing down on him. He was torn between his duty to their mission and the deep affection he had come to feel for Serena. Their relationship, once clear and professional, had become tangled with emotions he wasn't sure how to handle. Every time he tried to focus on their goal, thoughts of her, of the connection they shared, crept in. It wasn't just distracting, it was making him question his own priorities. The argument had revealed how difficult it was for them to maintain a professional distance while navigating navigating their growing feelings for one another. It felt like a delicate balance that was rapidly slipping out of his grasp. As the tension between them slowly dissipated, both Adrian and Serena found themselves wondering whether they were still capable of working together as seamlessly as they once had. The strain of their emotions was becoming more visible, and the unspoken worry about their ability to function effectively as a team began to creep in. They had faced trials and challenges together before, but this was different. The growing personal divide, though unspoken, had begun to seep into their every decision, every strategy. What had once been a unified force was now splintering under the weight of their inner turmoil. In the quiet that followed their argument, they both realized that something had to change. They couldn't continue down this path, torn between their feelings for each other and their duty to the mission. It was clear now that they had to address the emotional weight they carried, or risk letting it consume them entirely. The mission was far too important for distractions, but they couldn't deny the bond that had formed between them. As they stood there, unsure of the next step, both Adrian and Serena knew that they needed to find a way to navigate this new terrain together. The question was whether they could reconcile their personal feelings and their shared goals without losing sight of what they had set out to accomplish. Later that evening, the atmosphere in their room was thick with unspoken words. The dim light from a single lantern cast soft shadows across the walls, the quiet of the night amplifying the tension that had settled between them. Serena sat across from Adrian, her posture rigid, her hands clasped tightly in her lap as if trying to keep control over the emotions that threatened to spill out. The weight of their argument still hung in the air, unacknowledged yet present in every glance, every pause in their conversation. It was clear that something had shifted between them, and the fragility of their situation only made it harder to find a way forward. Adrian, his mind racing with conflicting thoughts, couldn't stand the silence any longer. He had spent hours going over the conversation in his head, replaying every word, every moment of doubt. Finally, he broke the stillness, his voice steady but laced with a vulnerability he rarely allowed to show. "We need to address this," he said quietly, looking directly at Serena. "Our feelings are real, and we can't keep ignoring them. But we also can't let them derail our mission." His words were deliberate, each one weighted with the gravity of their situation. Adrian had never been one to shy away from difficult truths, but acknowledging their growing connection was something new, something that required a level of honesty he had been avoiding. Serena met his gaze, her heart pounding in her chest. She had known, deep down, that this conversation was inevitable, but hearing the words spoken aloud made the reality of it all hit her in a way she hadn't expected. The conflict within her was palpable. Her feelings for Adrian were undeniable, but she had always prided herself on her ability to compartmentalize, to keep emotions separate from the mission. This, however, was proving to be a challenge she hadn't anticipated. She had seen the way Adrian had looked at her in moments of vulnerability, how their connection had deepened in ways either of them could have predicted. But as much as she cared for him, they were still on a mission, one that had the potential to change everything. The silence lingered for a moment before Serena finally spoke, her voice softer than before but firm. "I know," she replied, her eyes searching his face for any sign of uncertainty. "I've been trying to figure out how to balance this too. We've both changed over the course of this journey, but this mission, it has to come first. The curse, the heart of the reef, everything, it's bigger than us." Her words were laced with the weight of responsibility, but there was a flicker of something else in her eyes. Something that spoke to the bond they had forged, the trust that had grown between them despite the chaos that surrounded them. Adrian nodded, his heart heavy with the same sense of duty that Serena felt. Yet, beneath that, there was a quiet longing, a yearning to bridge the gap between them, to allow themselves the space to acknowledge what had grown in the silence of their shared moments. "I understand," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But we need to figure out how to move forward. We can't let our emotions be a distraction, but I also don't think we should suppress them completely. They're part of us now, part of this journey." He leaned forward slightly, his expression earnest. "We need to find a way to keep going, together, without losing sight of what we're here for." Serena nodded slowly, feeling a quiet resolve settle in her chest. It wasn't going to be easy, but she could see now that they needed to confront this head-on if they were going to stay true to their mission and to each other. The path ahead was uncertain, but at least they were taking it together, acknowledging the bond they shared while still holding on to the larger goal that had brought them here. The journey ahead was complicated, but for the first time in days, Serena felt a flicker of hope that they could navigate it, as long as they faced it side by side. Serena nodded, her gaze steady but filled with understanding as she absorbed Adrian's words. The weight of their conversation was not lost on her, but a part of her felt relief that they were finally speaking openly about the tension that had been growing between them. She had felt the pull of their connection for a long time, but acknowledging it aloud brought a clarity she hadn't expected. She understood the delicate balance they now faced. "You're right," she said, her voice quiet but resolute. "We need to find a balance. Our feelings for each other are important, but we need to ensure they don't compromise our quest." The words hung in the air, and as she spoke them, she knew that this wasn't just a promise to Adrian. It was a promise to herself and to the mission they had embarked on together. Adrian studied her face closely, looking for any sign of doubt or hesitation, but all he saw was determination. Serena had always been someone who took her responsibilities seriously, and even now, in the face of their growing connection, she hadn't wavered from her commitment to their goal. He could feel the tension in his chest ease slightly as he realized she understood the gravity of their situation just as well as he did. He had been afraid that their feelings might cloud their judgment, but hearing her speak so plainly about it gave him hope. Perhaps this was a challenge they could face together, rather than letting it drive a wedge between them. "We've come this far because of our trust in each other," Serena continued, her voice steady and strong, though there was a trace of emotion beneath her calm exterior. "Our bond has been our strength, but it has to be one that supports our mission, not distracts us from it." She looked at Adrian with an intensity that left no room for ambiguity. "We can't afford to lose sight of what we're fighting for. The heart of the reef, the curse, it's bigger than us. But that doesn't mean what we feel isn't real. We just need to keep it in perspective." Her words felt like a declaration of intent, a resolve to honor their emotions while still pushing forward with the responsibility they had undertaken. Adrian took a deep breath, feeling a renewed sense of clarity. Serena's ability to articulate their shared understanding gave him a sense of peace he hadn't realized he needed. He had been consumed by fear that their growing connection might cause them to lose focus. But now he could see that it wasn't a weakness. It could be a source of strength, if they allowed it to be. "I agree," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "Our feelings are a part of this journey, but we can't let them control us. We have a responsibility to the people depending on us, and to each other. We owe it to ourselves to stay true to our purpose." As they sat in the quiet of the room, their words settled between them like a shared understanding, a foundation they could now build upon. The air felt lighter, and though the path ahead was still fraught with uncertainty, they both knew that they could face it without letting their emotions derail them. Serena's expression softened, a small but genuine smile tugging at her lips. "We've got this," she said, her voice filled with a quiet confidence that mirrored Adrian's own. "Together, we can do this. We just have to remember why we started." With that, they both stood, ready to continue their journey with a renewed sense of unity and purpose, their connection stronger than ever, but their focus unwavering. Serena nodded, her eyes locking with Adrian's, her expression steady but softened with understanding. The weight of their conversation settled in the air between them, but a sense of relief also flooded through her. For so long, they had danced around the growing tension, neither willing to confront the feelings bubbling beneath the surface. But now, with this moment of honesty, a new clarity emerged. She had felt the undeniable pull of their connection for what seemed like forever, but putting it into words brought something unexpected, a resolution. She knew, in that instant, that they had to find balance. "You're right," she said, her voice calm but resolute. "We need to find a balance. Our feelings for each other are important, but we need to ensure they don't compromise our quest." Her words were more than just a reassurance to Adrian. They were a vow to herself, a promise that they would not lose sight of the mission that had brought them together. Adrian studied Serena carefully, searching her face for any sign of doubt, but he found none. There was only a fierce determination in her eyes, a reflection of the woman he had come to respect deeply over the course of their journey. Even now, when emotions could easily cloud judgment, she was unwavering in her commitment to their cause. His own worries, which had been gnawing at him for days, began to fade. Serena understood the gravity of their situation, perhaps even more so than he had feared. Her words were the confirmation he needed, that their feelings, while powerful, would not derail them. He had been terrified that their growing bond would become a distraction, a vulnerability that their enemies could exploit. But now, with Serena's quiet strength, he felt a spark of hope that maybe this, too, could be part of their journey, something that would help them grow stronger, together. "We've come this far because of our trust in each other," Serena continued, her voice gaining strength, though there was a touch of emotion hiding beneath her calm exterior. "Our bond has been our strength, but it has to be one that supports our mission, not distracts us from it." Her gaze didn't waver from Adrian's, her words cutting through the air with an intensity that made it clear she was committed, without reservation, to their cause. "We can't afford to lose sight of what we're fighting for. The heart of the reef, the curse, it's bigger than us. But that doesn't mean what we feel isn't real. We just need to keep it in perspective." In that moment, her words didn't just speak of a mission, but of the deeper commitment between them, one that would have to withstand the trials ahead, while remaining grounded in their purpose. Adrian's heart felt lighter as he listened to her, the storm of uncertainty he'd been carrying easing with every word. Serena's ability to express their shared understanding made everything clearer, and for the first time, he felt that their connection didn't have to be a threat, it could be a strength. The fear that had kept him on edge now seemed unnecessary, for he could see that their bond would not weaken their resolve, but reinforce it. "I agree," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "Our feelings are a part of this journey, but we can't let them control us. We have a responsibility to the people depending on us, and to each other. We owe it to ourselves to stay true to our purpose." The sincerity in his words resonated with Serena, and in that moment, they both knew they were more aligned than ever before. Their connection was something they could use to fuel their mission, not something that would divide them. As the conversation wound down, the quiet settled comfortably around them, an unspoken understanding between them. The weight of the world still pressed upon their shoulders, but now, they felt a little less burdened. Together, they had confronted the challenges not just of their quest, but of their hearts, and had emerged with a deeper sense of unity. Serena's expression softened, a faint but genuine smile forming as she looked at Adrian. "We've got this," she said, her voice a quiet declaration of confidence, a reassurance that, despite the obstacles, they were ready. "Together, we can do this. We just have to remember why we started." As they stood up, the air between them felt lighter, charged with the understanding that, no matter the obstacles ahead, they could face them with strength, purpose, and a shared bond that would guide them through the trials to come. Serena nodded, her eyes meeting Adrian's, her expression steady yet soft with understanding. The air between them grew heavier with the weight of their conversation, but at the same time, a wave of relief washed over her. For so long, they had danced around the growing tension, unwilling to acknowledge the feelings stirring beneath the surface. But now, with the truth out in the open, something shifted between them. The moment of honesty brought a new clarity. She had felt the pull of their connection for what seemed like an eternity, but putting it into words made it real, and with that reality came a sense of resolution. "You're right," she said, her voice calm yet firm. "We need to find a balance. Our feelings for each other are important, but we need to ensure they don't compromise our quest." Her words were not just for Adrian. They were a promise she made to herself, to their mission, and to the path they had chosen together. Adrian studied her closely, searching for any hint of doubt or hesitation in her eyes. But all he saw was unwavering resolve. There was no second-guessing, no faltering. Serena's gaze held a fierce determination that reaffirmed his respect for her. Even now, when emotions threatened to cloud their judgment, she remained steadfast in her commitment to their cause. Adrian's own anxieties, which had been gnawing at him for days, began to subside. Serena understood the gravity of their mission, perhaps even more than he had feared. Her words were the confirmation he needed, that their bond, while powerful, would not distract them from their purpose. In fact, he now saw it as something that could strengthen their resolve, not weaken it. The fear that their growing connection might become a vulnerability began to fade, replaced by a quiet hope that this challenge could be something they could face together. "We've come this far because of our trust in each other," Serena continued, her voice now gaining strength, though it still carried a thread of emotion. "Our bond has been our strength, but it has to be one that supports our mission, not distracts us from it." She didn't look away, her eyes fixed on Adrian, her words cutting through the silence with an intensity that made her commitment clear. "We can't afford to lose sight of what we're fighting for. The heart of the reef, the curse, it's bigger than us. But that doesn't mean what we feel isn't real. We just need to keep it in perspective." In those few sentences, Serena spoke not just of their mission but of the deeper bond between them, one that had to endure the trials ahead while remaining anchored in their purpose. It was a promise that their emotions, though important, would not overshadow the importance of their quest. Adrian felt a sense of relief wash over him as he listened to her, the uncertainty that had been clouding his thoughts slowly lifting. Serena's ability to articulate their shared understanding made everything feel clearer. For the first time, he saw their connection as a strength rather than a potential threat. The fear that their feelings would derail them now seemed unnecessary. Instead, he realized that their bond could reinforce their mission, fueling them through the challenges ahead. "I agree," he said, his voice steady yet gentle. "Our feelings are a part of this journey, but we can't let them control us. We have a responsibility to the people depending on us, and to each other. We owe it to ourselves to stay true to our purpose." His words, spoken with sincerity, resonated with Serena, and in that moment, they both knew they were more united than ever. Their connection, now understood and respected, would be an asset to their cause, not a hindrance. As the conversation tapered off, an unspoken understanding settled between them. The weight of their shared responsibility still pressed heavily on their shoulders, but they no longer felt so burdened. Together, they had faced not just the challenges of their quest, but the complexity of their emotions, and emerged with a deeper sense of unity. Serena's expression softened, a small yet genuine smile curving her lips as she looked at Adrian. "We've got this," she said, her voice steady but filled with confidence. It was a quiet affirmation that, despite the obstacles ahead, they were ready to face whatever came their way. "Together, we can do this. We just have to remember why we started." With those words, they both stood, their resolve strengthened, ready to continue their journey. The air between them was lighter, filled with the understanding that their bond, rooted in trust and purpose, would guide them through the challenges still to come.